Hello guys, welcome back to the Summer Investment Summit for high school students. I'm Tiana from St. Stephen's in Austin, Texas. We'll just let people roll in while we proceed. Yeah, I think people will slowly roll in.
Okay, everyone, I think we're about ready to get started. Again, I want to echo what Tiana said. I want to welcome everyone back to the second day of our seminar. And if y'all didn't catch the first day, which was yesterday, we are going to be posting all of the sessions on our YouTube channel, which you can find on our website. And hopefully this will be out later this week or maybe next week so that y'all can watch those again if you'd like. Of course, we have another 4 fantastic speakers today. And I'm just going to repeat what I said yesterday. We want this to be as interactive as possible. So please feel free to type questions in the Q&A section. Sorry about that. In the Q&A section so that towards the end of the hour, we can have an interactive conversation with all of our speakers. But our first speaker today is Mr. O'Malley. Mr. O'Malley is principal and head of capital formation at Pennybacker Capital, a data-driven real estate investment firm. He has experience across a wide variety of areas in the world of investing and is an adjunct professor at University of Notre Dame Fitzgerald Institute for Real Estate. Thank you so much for being here, Mr. O'Malley.
Thank you, Harrison, and thank you, Tiana. I appreciate the opportunity to speak to everyone. I wasn't able to join you guys yesterday, so I'm not sure how the other presentations went, but I can tell you I'm really excited about talking to you guys about real estate investment because this is really a segment of the investment space that I didn't know existed when I was certainly when I was in high school and quite truthfully in college as well. So I think it's great to get exposure to different types of investments through this summit, and I know you've got some great speakers yesterday and some others lined up today. So look forward to kind of talking to you guys about things. What I want to do is, and Harrison gave a good introduction of me. I'm Mike O'Malley. I live in Austin, Texas. Been here for about 23 years and seen Austin change quite a bit. 2008, I joined with my 3 partners and we started Pennybacker Capital, which is a real estate private equity firm headquartered here in Austin, but with offices in New York, Denver, and Charlotte. And for the last 14 years, I've served as CFO and COO of Pennybacker, as well as what Harrison said as head of capital formation, which basically means I go out and speak to our potential investors that want to invest in our projects. And that could be high net worth individuals or family offices or big pension plans, state pension plans, corporate pension plans, endowments. They all commit capital to invest with Pennybacker. And then on the side, I'm the executive in residence and an adjunct professor at the University of Notre Dame up in South Bend, Indiana. It's my alma mater. I love the school. If anyone on this panel is thinking about going to Notre Dame, please reach out to me separately. I would love to talk to you about it. But we started a real estate program there about 5 years ago. And right now it's the second largest minor in the entire university. We have about 350 students from across business school, but also the School of Science and Architecture and Engineering. And our goal is to make it one of the preeminent real estate programs in the country. And so I spend quite a bit of my time working to try to make Notre Dame a special place in the real estate world, and also to educate students who are really trying to understand real estate private equity investing. So I want to talk about 3 things today. One, I want to just do a very, very simple introduction to value investing for real estate. Value investing means it's when you buy an asset that you think can be worth more than it currently is if you simply put in some improvements and add some value to the asset and expand the worth. And if you're able to buy an asset, make it more valuable and sell it, you can produce profits for your investors. I want to talk a little bit about the traditional drivers of value in real estate and what most firms have looked at over the last 50 years. And then also just kind of open our minds a little bit and talk about new technology that is very much changing how real estate will be built, how it will be managed, and ultimately, I think it'll change what makes real estate valuable. And so we'll talk a little bit about that. Lastly, I'm guessing you guys are probably on mute, but Tiana and Harrison, if there's any questions and I miss it because I'm looking at my slides, just interrupt me. And then certainly I'll leave time at the end to go through any questions.
All right.
Cool. All right. So real estate value investing made simple. We're going to go through a very simple process of how you make money investing in real estate. And step one is you go out and ultimately you buy an asset. And in this example, we're going to buy an apartment complex. As I mentioned, step two is then you make improvements to the asset so that ultimately your tenants will pay you more in rent. And if it's an apartment complex, they'll pay more to live there. If it's an office building, maybe the companies that rent space from you will pay more to rent space from you. And similar for a retail site. If you buy a retail center and you want nicer retailers or nicer restaurants to want to ultimately operate out of your site, you might make some improvements to your shopping center to elevate the quality, and ultimately those restaurants or those tenants will pay you more to office there. Once you increase the rents, you've got the ability to sell an asset for a profit. And honestly, that's about as complicated as it is. It's not very complicated at all. There's a lot that goes into these three steps, but from a high level, that's what value investing is. So let's say we're going to buy this apartment complex right here. This is an apartment complex near the Domain in Austin, Texas. It's built in 1995. It's a fine apartment complex, but we think that it can do better. So we identify this apartment complex, and then we have to figure out how much to pay for it. And so I'm going to go to step one, which is you're buying an asset. So that apartment complex has 300 units, 300 different apartments. And every person who rents an apartment there pays about $1,500 a month for rent. And so the annual revenue of that apartment complex is 300 units times $1,500 times 12 months. It's about $6 million. Okay, so that's how much the apartment complex grosses in revenue. But then there's expenses to run that apartment complex. When we buy it, we get that $6 million in revenue. We get rental checks every month, but it costs us a lot to run it. We've got to pay taxes. We've got to keep up with the landscaping. We've got to maintain the pool and the outdoor patio and provide internet access to our tenants and have a full-time staff. And that costs, let's say, $5 million a year to ultimately run that apartment complex. So with that simple math, if you're taking in $6 million in revenue and you are spending $5 million, your annual profit when you buy this apartment complex is $1 million. Okay. And the way, and this is going to be part of the most complex thing I say in this discussion, but some of you might follow this because it's no different than public companies. the way that you ultimately figure out your purchase price is you put a multiple on that profit. So if the profit's $1 million, we're going to buy it at 20 times profit. So we're going to pay $20 million. Now that 20 is kind of a market number. You know, that's where assets of this quality for this apartment complex is trading. If it were a newer complex, it might be trading at 25 times revenue or times profitability. And if it were an older complex, it might be trading at 15 times profitability. But in this case, this is a 1995 apartment complex. It's going to trade at about 20 times profitability. So 1 times 20 equals $20 million. Okay, so now we've bought this apartment complex for $20 million. And ultimately, we want to go to step 2, which is make improvements to the asset so that tenants will be pay more to live there. So what we're going to do is we're going to go out and we're going to look at all the other complexes in the area, as well as maybe other properties we've owned and say, what can we do to bring value to this apartment complex so that people will pay more? And I pulled up a slide here that gives you a little bit of an idea. This is from a survey taken during the COVID pandemic, but all the items on the left are characteristics that people look for in apartment complexes. And that many of you, as you move off to college and in your second or third or fourth year, you know, you might be moving into an apartment, or certainly after you graduate. These are all things you look at. And so I've circled a few. A lot of apartment complexes don't have washer and dryers in every apartment unit. And instead, you might have a couple of laundry areas, you know, that are communal in the property. And as you all can imagine, everyone likes having a washer and dryer in their unit. Who wants to go downstairs to a common area to do your laundry? So whenever we buy an apartment complex that doesn't have washer and dryers in the unit, we say, is there a way to do that? Is there a closet or an area that we can put a washer and dryer in and make sure that we ventilate the dryer so that it can send the hot air out? And ultimately, if we can put a washer and dryer in the unit, we can charge more. So that's one thing that we look at doing. Allowing pets. That is something that has really gotten popular during the pandemic. And it's not so much just allowing pets, but also making your apartment complex pet friendly. And so oftentimes we'll take, maybe an old tennis court or an area of the apartment complex that wasn't utilized and turn it into kind of a cool dog run with, with things for dogs to climb on, fenced in so you can throw a ball and play with your dog. That's really valuable to people. People will pay more if there's interactive areas for their pet, and usually it's dogs, to allow their dogs to have a place to be able to play. I circled another one called amenities. Amenities is everything from, I mentioned free Wi-Fi. Oftentimes we will offer free Wi-Fi within our apartment complex. We might offer a laundry service so that, you're busy working every day. You don't have time to do your laundry or to take your dry cleaning out. We might partner with a local laundry service that will just come and pick it up from your doorstep. And then 2 days later, it just shows up back at your apartment. Or we might partner with Amazon and install Amazon package lockers. And so imagine you are working at your job and you order things on Amazon because everyone, especially your guys' age, is so used to ordering things online. And it's a great feature, but what you don't want, but you live in an apartment, and what you don't want is packages just showing up at all hours of the day and just sitting outside of your apartment. And so we'll partner with Amazon and put in lockers, maybe near the apartment clubhouse. And in the middle of the day, a package shows up, you get a text and it says, hey, hey, Harrison, you got a package. It's in locker 25. Here's the 8-digit code. And, when you get home from work, you can just walk over to that locker. It's safe. You open it up and you take your package. That's a great amenity that apartment residents love. And when this apartment complex was built in 1995, there really was no Amazon. So that, that wasn't something that was available. We also do things like putting in, I'm sure many of you guys have an Amazon Alexa. Well, we put in Amazon Alexas into our apartment complexes so that if something goes wrong in your apartment, let's say you have a faucet that's dripping, instead of having to wait till the office opens so you can go and report this issue, you can just be speaking into the air and say, hey, apartment complex, I have a leaky faucet in my guest bathroom. Please come and fix it. And 2 days later, you're at work, you completely forgot about that. And you'll get a text message saying, hey, we got your service request. We went in and we fixed your faucet. Those are all amenities that make the apartment more attractive to live in. And those kind of overlap into property technology. There's certainly other types of technology. Nest thermostats we like to put in. We like to put in really, high-end Bluetooth speakers built into the apartment so that, our residents don't have to necessarily go out and buy new Bluetooth speakers or stereo speakers. They're already in the system. Even a nice website, a place that you can go to and understand what's going on at the apartment complex, maybe pay your rent online. All of those things are examples of amenities, things that make the apartment better. Okay, so to recap, we have bought this apartment for $20 million. When we bought it, it was producing $1 million of profit. And we want to put in some of these amenities to boost the profit. And so let's say we did. Let's say we put in all the amenities that I just spoke about, and we were able to increase the revenue from 6 million to 6.75 million. So we increased the revenue about 12%. So everyone's rent went up about 12%. So instead of paying $1,500 a month, now you're paying $1,750 or $1,650. You're paying a little bit more, but you're getting all these new all these new amenities. And also your expenses went up. Now, instead of costing you $5 million to run the apartment complex, it costs you $5.25 million. So $250,000 more. Why does it cost more? Well, to put in these amenities, there's a cost to it. You have to rent the washers and dryers. You have to staff someone to watch over the dog park, things like that. But you raised your revenue $750,000, but your expenses only went up $250,000. So your annual profit is now $1.5 million. So you took your annual profit from $1 million a year, and you increased it to $1.5 million. Pretty cool. And it cost you $3 million to do that. It cost you $3 million to build out, rip up the tennis court and build out the dog park, to install the washers and dryers, to put in those package lockers and those Amazon Alexas. And so you've done it. You've invested the $3 million. You've increased your annual profit to $1.5 million. And now's the fun part. Now you get to sell the asset and make some money. And so let's go to it. We're going to sell the asset at the exact same multiple that we bought it at. But we're selling it on a multiple of 1.5 million instead of the 1 million that we bought it at. So 1.5 million times 20 is 30 million. So that's great. We're selling this asset for 30 million. We only paid 20 million for it. And then you remember we put in $3 million of improvements. This is supposed to be a minus sign. Now it is. And so what's our profit? Our profit is $7 million. It's 30 million minus the 20 million that we paid, plus the 3 million we put in. So we made $7 million off of purchasing this apartment complex, putting in some amenities, we've made a value investment. We were successful in raising the rents, And as such, we were able to make $7 million for our investors on this particular investment. That is classic value investing. It's not particularly complex. If you make it any more complex than what I just said, you're probably making it too difficult. The trick is finding apartments or office buildings or retail centers or industrial buildings that you can buy where there's opportunity to add value, to take that net profit from $1 million to $1.5 million. Now, with that introduction, I'm going to spend a little bit of time talking about what the traditional drivers of real estate value are. And then what I'm excited about is what's happening now and what's changing literally in real time and how it's going to change everything that I just talked about. So we did a survey and we talked to people who rent apartments. And we said, hey, when you rent an apartment, what's the most important stuff? What's the most important stuff to be close to when you're renting an apartment? And so 50% of residents said, grocery stores. I want to be close to a grocery store. I got to eat. I got to be able to buy food quickly. And so that's important. About 50% said, I want to be close to where I work. I don't want to drive an hour across the city. I don't want to drive a half hour. I want to reduce my commute time as much as possible. Some residents said, it's really important to be close to my family. Maybe my brother lives, in the neighborhood, or my parents live, not too far away, and I want to be close to them. Obviously, folks with kids, they want to be near good schools. This is what drives the apartment value in Westlake, for instance. The school district at Westlake is fantastic. And so people will pay more to live in an apartment in Westlake that has great schools. A lot of people, I just want to be near my friends. My friends live off of, near the Arboretum in Austin. I want to live near the Arboretum. And then you can see, all the different items that kind of rank there. But this is today what people really prioritize when they look at where do I want to rent an apartment. These are the top things that they look at. Number 1 and 2 are obviously grocery stores and work, and then everything else kind of falls below that. And as we think about it, we need to keep all of this in mind as we're looking to go buy new apartments and say, okay, this is what's important to our residents, and our residents are ultimately who's going to pay us rent and allow us to be profitable. So we got to make sure that we're addressing some of these things, and that when we go to look to buy an apartment, it kind of represents these characteristics and is in a good location. Similarly, for office buildings, okay, so we're flipping it a little bit. Now, this is a survey that we did for CEOs of companies, and we said, CEOs, what's the most important thing for your office building? They want it close to their home. They don't want to drive very far either. Close to a grocery store, no surprise. You want to be able to pick up groceries on your way home. You want to have restaurants near the office building so that your employees can go to lunch, can go to dinner. A lot of people like their office to be near, where their family is, or public transportation. Not such a big deal in Austin yet, although we are getting a light rail, but say in Chicago or New York or Boston, a lot of folks take public transportation, and so they want their office as close to the train stop as possible so that they don't have to walk very far. So you can, being downtown is often an important area. Folks want to have their office building downtown so that it's easy for clients to get to see them. It's easy for, for vendors to be able to get there. These are all the things that people look for today in the location of an office building. And then similarly, some of the amenities for an office building. I talked about amenities for an apartment complex. One of the most important things is people just want food on site. And so, they want a restaurant, or, what we'll often do is create a little area where food trucks can pull up, and we can have 5 different food trucks outside your office building. So when it's lunchtime and you're hungry, you can simply walk outside, or you have an app and you can look at, okay, what food trucks are going to be here today. But just having and that's a great example of a value add we do in office building, is we either build a nice restaurant into the office building, or we figure out other ways to get on-site food so that employees don't have to leave the office if they don't want to get lunch. They can simply, they have other options. Private outdoor space is a really popular thing that we've been adding to our apartment buildings. So, most folks walk around with earbuds or AirPods in their ears all day, and they take most of their phones from their cell phone. They don't use their desk phone anymore. And if you're like me, I like to walk around when I talk on the phone. Even sitting here talking to you guys can be difficult because I'm someone who likes to walk around. But if you're an employee at an office building, it's nice to have private outdoor space so that you can go take a call and walk around a courtyard versus sitting at your desk on an old-fashioned phone. And so when we look at adding amenities to an office building, oftentimes we'll try to add private outdoor space, or we'll add meeting spaces, maybe a really cool fitness center. These are all ideas of value add, and there's no restrictions on what you can do to an office building or an apartment complex. The most important thing is it's got to have the ability to make you money. So if you're going to invest that $3 million, you have to be able to increase the profitability of your asset to allow you to be able to sell the asset for more than what you purchased it for. So I think these are like this is traditionally what people are looking for. They're looking for location variables for apartments and for office. And many of you have probably heard the old saying, real estate's all about location, location, location. And to a large degree, that is true. Real estate in a great location is usually worth more than real estate at an inferior location. Why? Because people will pay more rent, either for an apartment or for an office building, to be in that better location and to be have better amenities. But this is kind of the fun part that I want to talk about, and about technology. And I think it's really changing. So I'm going to show you 3 examples of companies right here in Austin, Texas, that are truly changing what's going on with real estate. And some of you guys who ultimately may get into the real estate profession, these are things that you're going to be encountering and being able to take advantage of and really drive the adaptation. I assume you guys can see my screen with some some video. So this first item I'm showing you is a company called Icon. And what they do is they 3D print housing. Okay.
Mr.
Yeah.
We can't see the video if.
Oh, okay. Well, I will fix that. Thank you, Harrison.
There it is.
What about? Okay. So as many of you guys know, houses are usually built with wood, and then you put stone or brick or stucco on the outside of it. And it takes about 8 to 9 months to build a house from ground up. Well, Icon can bring a 3D printer out, and you can see just even on the walls here how they look like they're kind of stacked cement. That's exactly what it is. It's a big 3D printer that basically goes back and forth and can build this house in 3 weeks. So think about that. Today in Austin, Texas, it takes about 8 to 9 months to build a house, and there's a backlog. It's even taking longer because of the global supply chain shortage. Icon can come into a neighborhood, bring these big 3D printers out, and ultimately build your home in 2 to 3 weeks. Totally changes the landscape. And so, so much of investing is about short supply, and, things become more valuable when there's less supply available. Well, when you can go out and print a house in 3 weeks, you can really change that supply continuum. And so right here on the bottom, that is a 3D printer that is truly going back and forth. And you see on the middle one, the house a little bit further, the third one, the house a little further, and the fourth one, you can kind of see the roofs go on. It happens that quickly. This printer just goes back and forth. And so as we think about supply and demand, supply might be able to come up, and new supply might be able to come on in 2 weeks rather than 9 months. That is absolutely going to change how you value real estate and ultimately where you might buy an apartment. So that's one technology. I want to go to a second technology. And this is something I think you are all probably pretty aware of, and it is autonomous vehicles. And so obviously one of the first to really push this was Tesla. Tesla has self-driving vehicles that it's pretty weird when mostly there's a driver sitting in the seat, but the car is doing the driving. But we're not that far away from autonomous vehicles. And so I think about this when I think about parking. When we buy an office building, we always think about parking. Is there enough room for our employees to park? And are there enough parking spots? And if you drive by an office building, you see tons of parking or parking garages. Similarly, for apartments, you see parking garages or parking lots outside of the apartments. Well, what happens when all of us don't need a car anymore? And effectively, when you want to go somewhere, you pull out your Uber app, a car comes and picks you up, it drops you off, and then the car goes and does, other Ubers for other people. It doesn't need to park at the office. And so all of these parking garages are now not as valuable as they used to be. And so, I look at that and say, okay, should we rip down those parking garages and build another office building right there? Because in 15 years, no one's going to be driving their own car to work. They're just going to be hopping in an autonomous vehicle. It'll get them there, and then the vehicle will go do something else. In an apartment complex, are we able to reduce the size of the parking lot and maybe put in a new golf simulator, another amenity for people to utilize, or a pickleball court, or another dog run? But autonomous vehicles are making parking lots somewhat less necessary and ultimately antiquated. And so that's something I never thought I'd be talking about 10 years ago, but it's absolutely happening now. And autonomous vehicles are a big part in doing that. I'm going to flip back to my screen. Okay, now let's talk about new modes of transportation. One of Austin's newest residents is Elon Musk. He moved here about 3-4 years ago. Many of you know him. He started Tesla. He also started a company called the Boring Company. And what the Boring Company does is they create a system where they bore down through the earth, and you drive on a road to an elevator. You drive your car into the elevator. It then brings you down maybe 100 or 200 feet below earth. Your car sits on a conveyor belt, and then it can go 150 miles per hour underground across town, and then come up through the elevator on the other side of town. Any of you who have ever been stuck in traffic know how valuable that can be, where you simply avoid the traffic by going underground. Well, think about this. Think about if the Boring Company is able to build tunnels, and here's one in Las Vegas, for instance. Think about if the Boring Company is able to build tunnels in cities, and all of a sudden that proximity, remember when I was talking about where people want to live, they want to be close to work or family or a grocery store, and the same of where they office, they want to be close to home or restaurants. Well, what if now you can go underground, and so it's not real, and you can get to wherever you need to go at 150 miles per hour. You don't really care about being as close anymore. So for instance, you might be able to have an office building that's 20 miles outside of town. But if you can get there at 150 miles per hour, that's a minute away. And so that totally changes the value of real estate. And all of a sudden the location premium isn't as important as other benefits of that real estate. And so I think what's happening with the Boring Company, obviously the first project is in, as I mentioned, was in Las Vegas. They did the Las Vegas Super Loop, or Las Vegas Convention Center Loop. And it's really neat what they did. And ultimately, I think you're going to see the Boring Company develop projects in other cities as well. And for a city like Austin, which has a ton of traffic, it's going to be massively important to create more mobility and change how we value real estate. Okay. And what it didn't show was a cool video of that, which I apologize. I wanted you to be able to see the tunnel, but that's all right. And then the last thing I want to talk about is I talked about how you can go underground to get to places. There are multiple companies in Austin working on personal drones. And so instead of going underground, let's go above ground. If I want to go from St. Stephen's campus to downtown Austin at 5 o'clock in the afternoon, and I'm taking 360 to Mopac, it's going to take me a half hour to 45 minutes. If I do it in a personal drone, it's going to take me about 5 minutes. And so as a real estate owner, we're looking at things and saying, okay, we need to put drone landing pods on our buildings. If it's an office building, we need a place for people to park their drone. If it's an apartment complex, we need a place for people to be able to land their drone when they come home from work. This sounds crazy, but this is where things are going. And as an owner of real estate, you need to think about it. If you own an office building and your employees in 10 years want to get there via drone and you don't have a place for them to land, but you have a big parking garage, that's not going to be sufficient because people aren't going to want to drive anymore. They're going to want to take their drone. And so these are the things that we need to think about and be able to add these amenities to our assets, or in the example of a drone landing pod, or that will change the value of real estate. If people are able to take a tunnel at 150 miles an hour, maybe it's okay if your office building is out in Leander or Bastrop or 20 miles outside of Austin, because people can get there so quickly. So with that, I will stop presenting and open it up to questions. But I hope this was a good overview of how folks and how we think that that real estate will be utilized in the future. And I've got one question that just came up. It's, what's your opinion on Austin's real estate market today? It's an excellent question. Austin has a very, very strong real estate market today. And it all really stems from supply and demand. For the last 15 years, we've had about 170 people move to Austin every single day for 15 years. And so real estate is ultimately a derivative of the cash flows that people are willing to pay. And because there's so much demand in Austin and so little supply, pricing has gone up. And so you've seen that in housing. Apartments are very expensive in Austin. Office buildings, rent is expensive. And so as long as the demand stays where it is, I think Austin's real estate market has a chance to continue to be very strong, as it is today. It's one of the fastest growing, hottest, most expensive markets in the United States. And I think that will continue. Okay. Second question is, considering all the technological innovation, do you think having a background in technology will help having a career in real estate investing? Absolutely. And I will tell you, when we are hiring new folks at our firm, we want people to have a diverse background in technology, in engineering, in things other than just real estate investment, because someone needs to understand this technology and how it'll ultimately help bring value to our assets. And so I would encourage anyone who is thinking about going into any investment field to, really look hard at a double major or a minor. But finance and investing is an incredible major, and it is fantastic and really important skill sets. But broadening your expertise and understanding more about technology or engineering only makes you stronger and a better investor. So I would absolutely say a background in technology would be helpful. Great question. Where do you find your investors? When do investors get paid back? So we find our investors, we kind of know who they are. So for instance, one of our investors is the Teachers Retirement System of Texas. It's the largest pension plan in Texas and one of the 5 largest in the country. And every retired teacher in the state of Texas gets a pension plan or benefits from Teachers Retirement System of Texas. And so it's groups like that we go to and we say, hey, this is what we're doing. We're raising money to buy these apartment complexes. And when we sell them, ultimately we're going to return profits back to you. And so they, as a firm, we have about 500 different investors, ranging from the University of Texas, who's a big investor, to the United Nations, to Teachers Retirement System of Texas, to ultra high net worth individuals, some of whom you guys probably know, in Austin. And that's it's up to me and my coworkers to find these investors and ultimately to bring them into and introduce them to Pennybacker. How do you think university's business education will prepare us to face all the technology? That's a great question. And what I will tell you is, most of the business schools in America have a strong focus on technology, and that's changed over the last 15 years, some better than others. And I think that some better than others statement is important. If the value of really understanding technology and how it's going to affect, in this case, the real estate market's important. And so if you are looking at a career either in real estate investment or oil and gas investing, or even, venture capital, which is very technology driven, having an understanding of technology and what differentiates technology is really important. So I think a business education gives you the basics on business, and you need to find, and some schools are, obviously better than others at that, but then you need to push your electives really into some of these technology forward electives. It's even things like at Notre Dame, we require all business school students to take Python. It is an absolute requirement to get a business degree. And as such, everyone who goes through that class has a different level of understanding of how to utilize and manipulate data, and a different approach to technology. We're adding new technology classes that are required that you have to take every year. All right, I'm just skipping now to the next question. What's your opinion on Zillow closing its home flipping business? So the way that this is a great question. I thought it was kind of cool what Zillow did. They wrote an algorithm that helped them try to figure out how much they could pay for a house without ever seeing it. Seems like a good idea, except their algorithm was wrong and they were paying too much for houses. And so if a house was maybe worth $700,000 in Austin, their algorithm was saying it was worth $800,000. And so all of a sudden you're sitting there reading the news on your iPad, and you get an offer from Zillow saying, hey, I'll pay you $800,000 for your house. And you're saying, wow, I only thought my house was worth $700,000. You were a seller, and a lot of people sold and made a lot more than they should. Zillow lost a ton of money by overpaying for these houses and then not being able to resell them at a profit. And so I think it was a costly mistake for Zillow. This business will come back. Someone will get the algorithm right. There are other systems out there. But the absolute reason for failure is their algorithm was wrong. What majors do you suggest we study in college to prepare for doing real estate investment? Obviously, a finance or accounting background makes a lot of sense because you have to be really good with numbers. Also, engineering, whether it's mechanical engineering, civil engineering, having a very, engineers are very good at science and math, and that will give you the analytical tools to be able to evaluate real estate, both in a spreadsheet and understanding, the finances of it, but also in really understanding the real estate. One of the things that for me, I only have a business degree and an MBA, but I don't know the engineering. So I don't know how many apartment units we can build on a particular piece of land because I don't understand the engineering. So I have to rely on engineers. If you have an engineering background, you just have a little bit more understanding, and it brings you a little bit more skills. And so I'd say an engineering degree or a finance and accounting degree are probably the most typical degrees that you see for people with real estate investment careers. Any suggestions on what to look and read to self-learn real estate? Any book, website, magazine? Yeah, there's a few that I can tell you. One website is called Globe Street. So the word globe and then st.com. Globe Street kind of just tells you what's going on in the world of real estate investment. There's another one called IREI, and I think it's .org. It might be .com. It's the International Real Estate Institute. Again, it gives you a lot of information about who's buying real estate, what it costs, and we'll take you through some case studies of different real estate transactions. And if there is follow-up, Tiana or Harrison can reach out to me if people want more sources, and I come up with I can send some other sources as well. Could you share how you got into real estate investing? Yeah, I got into it a little bit different. I was running a software company here in Austin, and I had raised a good amount of money from venture investors, and I was really kind of operating the company. And so I was the COO and the CFO, and my business partner at Pennybacker approached me and said, "Hey, would you want to join me in starting a real estate investment firm?" And at first I said no. I kind of like what I'm doing in the technology space. And then I realized, you know what, this is a great opportunity to become an owner of a firm and really do something different. So after thinking about it for about 6 months, I joined him in starting a real estate company with zero real estate background at all. I knew nothing about real estate. Everything I've just told you, you now know more than I knew when I decided to help start a real estate company. But I was able to learn it from my partners, from others in the industry. And it was my opportunity. I knew I wanted to be in the investment management business, and it was my transition. It just so happened that real estate was the asset class that I chose. And then lastly, I know I'm running out of time. What is one suggestion you would give to us who want to pursue a career in real estate investing in the future? As you are looking at colleges, and I know many of you guys are starting the application process, and it's going to be extremely nerve-wracking, but ask questions. And, I know that there's pretty in-depth websites, but ask questions of the admissions office and ultimately find out, does this university have a real estate program? University of Texas, right down the street from St. Stephen's, has a fantastic real estate program, one of the top 5 in the country. So does Columbia. Wharton at University of Pennsylvania has a fantastic real estate program. University of Wisconsin has a fantastic real estate program. Cornell has a really good one, especially if you want to go into hotels. And then, as I mentioned, Notre Dame has a fantastic real estate program. But you've got to, as you're picking your undergrad institution, get an understanding. Do they have a real estate program? Because if you can start understanding these concepts, and, I teach a real estate private equity class at Notre Dame, what a fantastic advantage it is to take these classes, your junior year in college versus learning it at 35 years old when I did. And so I would say ask questions of the admissions or dive deeper into their website and find out, hey, what real estate investment classes do they actually have? And I think that would be incredibly valuable for anyone who's considering a career in real estate. All right. Well, Tiana and Harrison, I think I've used up most of my time. And so I'm available for any more questions, or I can transition to let David take the stage.
Well, I think we're out of questions, but thank you so much for coming. This was amazing. I think everybody enjoyed your speech, and I think if you'd like to come back and work with us again, people would really like that. So
absolutely.
Really appreciate it. Really appreciate it. Thank you so much. Landing late last night, coming today early morning.
Thank you, Tiana. Thank you, Harrison. Everyone on. I think it's great that you guys are doing this in the summer and enriching where your future is going to be. I think it's great that St. Stephen's put this on and led by Tiana and Harrison. So great work, guys. And thank you for allowing me to join you all today.
Thank you so much for joining us.
Bye-bye.
Have a great day. Bye.
Well,
so we'll have a 4-minute break. So please just stay online because I think our next speaker will be on shortly. So just don't log out, I believe. Yeah. And then stretch your legs.
we will see you all back at 10 o'clock for Mr. Nguyen, our next speaker.
Right.
So I think it's 10:02, so we gave everyone a couple extra minutes. If you're ready, we can get started if that's okay.
Yeah, this is a small group, so maybe we just kind of go around real quick. I do want to go back around and to see who's online and maybe get a quick intro, and then I'll do my intro and kind of jump into it. Is that okay?
Sure.
I think
Tiana,
because
turn to you.
it's me. Okay, hi, I'm Tiana. I'm a rising senior at St. Stephen's in Austin, Texas. I run the investment club at our school. Yeah.
Tiana, what is your interest, particularly in just finance in general? I guess give me some background on that too.
Me, I think it's just in general, I'm still like exploring different things. Also interested in pre-med, might do both. It's hard, but we'll see where it leads me. But yeah.
Very cool. And what schools are you looking at right now to applying to?
Dream School, Rice.
Dream School,
If you really ask, UT Austin, definitely.
All right, Harrison, you're up.
I'm going to be a junior next year, and I don't know. I help with the investment club a lot. I have taken a college investment course before, and my particular areas of little bit more interest are broad investment banking, but M&A work more specifically, uh, and generally, I guess early venture capital also is an interest of mine. So.
Awesome. Then Michael, I don't know if you want to introduce yourself a little bit as well.
Oh,
Oh, yeah. I will just say I'm a principal at a real estate private equity firm and just had a chance to, and a professor at the University of Notre Dame, and just had a chance to speak about real estate investment prior to you jumping on.
Awesome. Well, my analogy between for investment banking and private equity is real estate. So a lot of commonality there when it comes to just the broader theme of investment. Okay, well, I give a quick intro. I think, Harrison, were you in the last call when I did this as well, or no?
Yes, I believe I was in the last call. I think I lost internet connection, so I wasn't able to join for the full thing.
Okay, very cool. Yeah, I was imagining a little bit more folks to be on. Maybe this might be repetitive to some of you guys, and just let me know if there's anything you want to particularly, obviously this probably more for Tiana and Harrison, for your guys' benefit. So however, you guys want to lead the discussion, just let me know. But again, I graduated from St. Stephen in 2012, and I went to Middlebury College and I got an economics degree there. I graduated in 2016. Shortly after graduating from Middlebury, moved to New York, where I worked in the investment banking division at RBC Capital Markets, covering the industrial space. So it's what we called it was industrials and diversified services, kind of a catch-all bucket, broader coverage, but in terms of product, covered both M&A, equity offerings, as well as debt financings as well. So got a good breadth there, and exposure to different various types of products, and then worked there for 5 years, half decades or so. And I recently joined SEO there, here in Philadelphia, last year. And where we focus on primarily is investing in middle market firms in the industrial space. When I say industrial, it's really any manufacturing businesses, anything that makes a tangible good. Now, we are specifically focused on sort of more special situations. So, we're not your typical private equity shop where, we're just slapping a multiple on a target and whoever outbids the other person wins the deal. We typically find value by investing in sort of situations that are a little bit hairier. Either that's a company that has customer concentration, a company that maybe is in a particular non-sexy end market, or not a sexy product that people really think about. Where we think we can add value as an investor, and the purchase price is not just who can pay the most, but sort of time, like certainty, partnering with management, and what we can bring to the table. There's that end of the spectrum, and then there's sort of more distressed life situations where we'll invest in businesses that may be going through a bankruptcy, and we'll be a stalking horse bid in that process, or a company that's just sort of undergoing really bad financial performance and is over levered, and we can come in and sort of help clean that up and maybe put it through a bankruptcy process. But bankruptcies are hairy situations, so ideally you do sort of an out of bankruptcy dealings with all the stakeholders involved and try to come up with a solution that makes everyone happy. So that's sort of what I do now. We'll say that last year and during COVID is when you'll think we'll see the most deals, but last year was actually kind of quiet for us as you sort of saw the market really sort of bounce back from COVID, and there's a lot of money out there to sort of help insulate businesses, sort of putting a Band-Aid on a wound. And with easing of regulatories as well, a lot of folks were, actually doing pretty well where the markets were. So there weren't a ton of distressed deals. We are seeing some of that unwind a bit in the market. There are a lot of deals now that are hairier that are coming to market, and they're not necessarily, I would say, distressed, but there are signals that we call them zombie deals, where sponsors have been in it for a while and are just sort of looking to exit and see what they can get out of the market. We call those kind of like zombie deals. But that's what I'm sort of seeing in the market now. I think the last time we spoke, guys, things were kind of quiet on our end, but things have definitely surely picked up. And, we still imagine, that being the case going into 2023, that the pipeline will be replenished and you're going to see a lot more sort of distressed assets come to market. So that's where I focus in terms of industry-wise. Could go through, if you guys still have any questions, Tiana and Harrison, on sort of your thoughts on, what is investment banking or private equity, if you guys want me to sort of give an analogy there, or kind of explore that a little bit, or sort of I can jump into what another thing I had on here was sort of recruiting, some sort of steps that you kind of take now that can prepare you for a career in this IB or private equity. So let me know what's most useful for you guys.
Well, I think that since we had Mr. O'Malley speak just a couple minutes ago, I think it might be best to start with the recruiting aspect a little bit, if that's okay with you.
Yeah, of course. Listen, I think it's good that you guys are starting this process now. I would say recruiting is starting earlier and earlier through the process. Going into college, I would say my personal experience was I didn't know what investment banking was or private equity. Sort of through the career center is how I learned about it. Friends and people kind of who were, aware of the industry and sort of had internships and told me about it. And that's how I became interested and started my path toward down this in terms of investment banking and private equity. It's gotten earlier and earlier. You do need to start networking sooner than later. So I think it's a good thing that you guys are already doing this and you guys are having more background. I think that gives you a leg up when you enter college, where recruiting really starts. These banks, let's start with IB. Banks such as Goldman, JPM, like the big four, right? There's like a top 10 list. But the big four and those others really have targeted schools that they go to, and they do info sessions, and they talk about what is IB, what it takes to be in this field and such. And so going to those are good because it's a great networking opportunity. I highly recommend that. You should, as finance starts early, so and it's very competitive. So in terms of recruiting, it's good if you start having that discussion with the career centers and saying, this is what I'm interested in. Are we a target school? Depending on where you go, and if there are any alumni that I'm sure there are, you start reaching out to alumni and saying, hey, like I'm freshman, sophomore. I'm interested, would like to have a dialogue with you to better prepare myself for a junior year internship. So that's sort of like the big step in order to enter this field, is really locking in that junior year internship. I would say most of these banks hire out of that pool. So, I'm not saying it's like impossible, because I did it without having that junior year internship, but I would say it's very, very hard, especially if you're at a non-target school and you don't have any sort of you haven't done any networking prior to that. So trying to secure a job senior year is going to be extremely tough. So I would say start early, communicate with your whatever college you go to the career center, ask them for a list of alumni who are within, your field of interest, either that's IB, VC, or private equity, and start networking. A lot of folks would tell you that investment banking is the first step to take, just because you get exposure to all the products, or you kind of learn how to model and such through investment banking. And that's sort of, I would call it the plain vanilla, like that's a traditional route that people usually take, and I took that route to position yourself for a private equity job. Most private equity firms don't give out offers to college students just because they require someone who is a little bit more advanced in terms of finance knowledge, how to run a deal, what a deal looks like, and sort of modeling that. It's tough for them to invest that time into an analyst or associate, so they typically hire associate outside of banking that already has that experience and kind of has that investor mindset. I'll pause there, see if you guys have any questions. But that's sort of the first step, is like networking is key, and it is, having that conversation early and showing up to these things and start taking down people's emails and having those early discussions, so that when the schools say, okay, you can apply to these positions now junior year, you want to lock in that internship, and you'll see that's when they give out offers at the end of summer, and that's when people lock in their offers for full time. So I'll pause there and see if you guys have any questions.
It looks like we have two questions in the Q&A right now. First one is, what major do you think we should choose to prepare for a career in private equity?
So I went to a liberal arts college. That I would say, obviously having a finance background is good. You'll know what the terminologies are. You'll know. Also, I just realized there are 28 attendees. You guys are the only one in video chats, but everyone else, I guess, dialed in. So there's a lot more people online. Having a finance degree is helpful. I think you learn a lot of that in school. And so these interviews are technical, right? When I talk about that, securing that junior internship, it becomes fairly technical. They start asking you questions that realistically you will learn on the job, but it's a way to weed out folks who aren't as interested, or folks who just sort of, it's a way, because everyone shows up well on a resume. It's a way to weed out those who has a bit more experience than others. So I think going to a school where you major in finance and learn this stuff is helpful. But with that said, I went to a liberal arts college. Finance isn't hard to understand the terminology. Like if you do your reading and you sort of do work on the side, or have sophomore year internships, or have these sort of discussions with people in the who are professionals in the field, you can get up to the learning curve fairly easily. I was the econ major. Econ didn't help me out at all, I would say, in finance. It's applicable to an extent, but like not a ton. It's all very, econ is very theoretical, et cetera, and finance is very sort of, how to value a business, and that's very different. So, I also know friends who are classic majors who went into finance. So I think it's a little bit more important to sort of network than it is. It's like having the right major. Because, if you know someone who can connect you to someone within, the bank, they're going to look at you regardless, and they're going to meet it, because they do this with everyone. They meet a ton of folks who are finance majors, non-finance majors. I would say, maybe being a finance major give you a minor leg up, but it's not huge. It's just, if someone else can also answer the questions, then like that's fine. I think, it's more sort of the networking aspect is really the biggest key. And if you don't have those connections, it's tougher, and you'll see your resume not be on the top of someone's list.
We have another question.
Yep.
Considering your background of going to a liberal arts college, what do you think is the advantage, disadvantage of going to liberal arts college?
This is just my opinion, right? I don't say this is always the case, but I think those who went to a liberal arts college and enter this field tend to come in with more open mind. It's not, I've seen this done this way, so this is how I would value a company, and like, very textbook oriented. I see folks who come in as liberal arts, a lot more open-minded in the field. They tend to think outside the box. They're better, in IB too, there's a lot of areas where it's marketing based, where you're putting together marketing decks. And I think find those kids who tend to, aren't just number based oriented, excel more in sort of framing the deck and having, that discussion when it comes to sort of marketing a firm. They're a lot more, so like, that's what I would say. Reading and writing is important, and communication is key. And I find that once you get the technical side of it, that those who excel in IB are those who can communicate well and are able to sort of shine and think outside the box. So I think there's value to liberal arts. Not saying like, those who went to a STEM school and such aren't, but I find those kids a lot more, they're a lot easier to give work to, just because they know what they're doing. And like, but over time, I find, those that, can think outside the box, those are really the values that you want as you become more senior in this space. You're not just doing the work, you're also sort of thinking and contributing to the conversation. So I find, that was the best thing that, that gave me an advantage, was I thought that I communicated a lot better than some of my peers. And, some of the ideas I brought to the table were a little bit more outside the box, and they just weren't, A plus B, but I was also like, why don't we just do it this way? I know we've always done it this way, but I've also seen it, this seems to be a more logical path in this situation, if that makes sense.
Looks like we have a couple more questions. Where do you find your investors? Which I guess it means where do you find clients?
In what, private equity or IB?
IB, I assume.
So I guess I'll take a step back. In investment banking, private equity firms are your clients. They're one of your clients. So when you're an investment banker, I'm going to use the real estate analogy here. You're kind of the middleman between a buyer and a seller. Your clients can be either, right? So you can either sell a business. So your client would be the seller, either that being a company that is privately owned. It could be a publicly traded company. It could be, a private equity firm that owns a portfolio company. So they could be your client. You'll be on the sell side. On the buy side, your client can also be a private equity firm looking to buy a company. So you can advise them on the merger or the acquisition. So then in that case, that's a private equity firm can be your client. When you're a private equity firm, you're really the client. You don't really have clients. Like you're the one buying companies. So you look for targets to acquire, and you do that. I guess I wouldn't call them a client, but how do you get there? It's like you can go through intermediaries such as an investment bank. There are guys out there who their sole job is to introduce buyers to a process. So let's say, it could be a two-man shop and they heard that deal is going on, X bank is selling it. They may know that's something that you may be interested in. They'll connect you guys. So you'll have those sort of intermediaries that you can work with. There's also sourcing that you can do yourself. A lot of private equity firms have sourcing analysts where they go out and they basically cold call companies and say, are you looking to sell? And they'll have their own sourcing there. It's a lot more cold calling. Does that answer the question?
I think so. We're getting a couple more questions now. What do you suggest we do in high school to prepare for college and career?
Generally, or more specific to finance?
Probably more specific to finance, but I mean, in general also works.
Yeah, of course. Like I said, I think what you major in was a prior question. What schools you go to, whether liberal arts or, more finance oriented school. I think those have their advantages, right? But they're not something that, the real important aspect is networking. And it's starting early. It is reaching out to your network and not being afraid to, utilizing St. Stephen's network, for example, or utilizing your college network, and like having those early discussions is what's actually going to get you into this field, like IB and private equity in general, just because it's so competitive. It becomes sort of a little bit like, who do you know, sort of to advance your resume when they're receiving like 2,000 resumes. Like how do you get up on top? That's how a network of folks who will say, hey, have you received this person? We should interview them. And then everything else you can kind of learn through discussions with people. You can order a bulk guide on IB or private equity and read it and learn it on your own time in the summer. I don't think that's sort of what would differentiate you. Like, yes, you have to answer some technical questions, but they're very basic technical questions. They're not anything that's anyone in the field can't answer. They're not like brain teasers or anything. There are a couple brain teasers to kind of test you, but the technical aspect of it is just like, okay, can you just show me that you're interested in this field? And like, I think that's where maybe, if you had a finance background, you would maybe be a little bit more comfortable. And then if you're in a liberal arts background, maybe you aren't as comfortable, but you can get up there. It's really the networking aspect that really drives success in sort of this preliminary aspect of getting into the field. So like I said, I will emphasize network, take down people's email, contact them. Don't be afraid to reach out and say, I'm interested. Can we have a discussion? And then, whoever you reach out to is also going to give you guidance on how to best prepare yourself for these interviews.
I know you just talked about it a little bit, but what do you think we should do for networking? How do we network?
This is a networking call. Obviously, Tiana has my email. You can reach out to Tiana if you want to have more one-on-one chats with me. I know I've already spoken to, one or two folks who have done that. If you're particularly interested in this, or if you're just curious, right? I mean, I think every alumni and those who can connect you to them, are always going to be willing to take a phone call and sort of tell you what they do. People love to talk, right? Like, I love to talk, right? People like to tell you what they're doing because this is what they love doing. And, they want people in that field, and they want, young, talented folks like you guys to be in it. And the earlier you start, the better, right? Because then they can connect you being like, hey, like, I know XYZ is coming to your school next week. Let me reach out to them and make sure you guys have coffee. That's how it starts. You start with one person, they start reaching out to other people for you and connecting you. And you shouldn't be afraid to put yourself out there to say, okay, can you connect me with someone else? Like, I'm really interested after our conversation. Like, that was amazing. Or you can ask them, if there are any reading materials that I can do, and can I follow up with you in a couple weeks after I've dug in a little bit more? Like, that's how you do it, right? You dig in, you do your work, you do the intro calls, you dig in, you follow up, and then you ask to get introduced to other folks. And then you eventually build up, a network of 5 or 10 or so, and it'll grow pretty quickly. Like, this is very normal. Like, people, analysts, associates who work in IB, that's all they do during recruiting season is talk to prospects who are interested. Like, that's all they do. So that's how you do it. You start with one person, and don't be shy. I would not say don't be shy. Be very transparent of what you're looking for. Show that you're interested, and you're gonna start building up your network.
I know we've had about 3 questions in a row about networking, but this is a little bit more specific. Are there any good learning opportunities going into 8th grade? How young can students find networking opportunities?
How young? I mean, I don't think age matters here. Like I said, this is a good start here. You can start whenever. I don't think being an eighth grade or being a ninth grade really matters. It's something that you want to explore. You can always have a phone preliminary call with anyone to chat with anyone. Yeah, I would just say feel free to, chat with people, have these conversations, when you talk about your careers and such and like what you want to do, the more you think about it, the better. I don't know if that answers the question or not, but yeah, I don't think age matters. If you're really interested and this is something you want to pursue, you can start networking now. You don't have to wait down the road to do it.
Great. Could you share more about your story or on how you got into IB and PE?
Yeah. So again, I said I would say I didn't go the traditional route. I didn't do any of this. So I had a little bit of an uphill battle going for me. But I started working at Durbin Bennett, private wealth firm in Austin. Got an internship there, and that's where I got introduced to the world of finance. Right, like what sort of more retail focused investing. And it's not similar, sort of. It introduced me to the various vehicles, right? So like stocks, debt, more so equities than mutual funds and what people invest in. So that sort of piqued my interest. Then I went to the Career Center and said, this is what I did over the summer. I still really didn't know what finance was, right? Like, you start in private wealth and people tell you like, mutual funds and hedge funds, and you hear a little bit of private equity investment, but like you don't really know what any of that means. It's just jargon at that point. So I went to the Career Center, said, I think I want to pursue a path in finance, and are there any internships I can learn more? I at the time did not know that Apollo was a massive PE firm. And I got that internship, luckily, but I had no idea. Like people were like, "Wow, you got an internship at Apollo?" And I'm like, "Yeah, but I don't know what this firm it does." So then that was when I learned a little bit more. I started on the corporate strategy desk for them. So that desk essentially, I got this network through networking with Middlebury alumni, right? So the guy that ran the credit strategy desk at Apollo, Anthony Savali, is sort of their CEO, sort of his operator, I guess, of the credit group, and he went to Middlebury, and he loves Middlebury students joining his group. So, and this group, like I said, they're professionals, and everyone who joins the group have worked in IB or have spent 3 or 4 years in the industry before joining the team. I came in fresh, pretty much drank from water holes. There's not a lot that they can give me to do because I just didn't know a lot of things, but I did a lot of reading on the desk. I asked a lot of questions. And that was junior year, right? This is sort of the key time, as I mentioned, like to get that junior year internship, because most banks, if you're trying to pursue IB, give out offers to their junior internship class. So I realized this, but Apollo's a brand name. They work with the street, and they knew all the guys at the bank. So my resume sort of, that's just when I say networking is very key here. They, said, "Oh yeah, I'll call all the banks that I know of and throw out your resume. Just send me your resume and I'll shoot it to them." And so I got a lot of phone calls from these guys. I also pursued the Middlebury route as well, where I called Middlebury alumni, but it was a lot harder then because one, these Middlebury alums just didn't know me at that point. Like they were saying, like I love you, but I've also been reached out to by like 10 other kids, and to be honest, I spoke to those like there's maybe 2 spots, and I've spoken to 5 of the other 10 more than I've spoken to you. I wish you best of luck, but I'm going to focus on getting these other 5 into the job because I've spoken to them for like XYZ and they didn't get a return offer for their other job for some reason. So that was heartbreaking. But, they continued to pursue the Apollo route, and that's how I got an interview at RBC. And did well in the interview, got some guidance from my friends who interned in those roles their junior year summer, and got the job. I'll give you a little bit of flavor on the interview too. So it is kind of intense. It's, obviously you submit your resume, you have preliminary calls with the HR department and a couple of other folks. They vet you. It's really behavioral for half of the call. The other half is they start throwing a little bit of technicals at you in finance. But everyone gets kind of nervous. Everyone overstudies for them. And you should be prepared for this. It's more just gauging your interest. You pass that test, and then you kind of go through like a super day is what they call it. So you go to the bank. The bank will fly you out wherever you are. You go to a super day with all the other applicants who made it through. They only have, let's say they have 5 spots. They'll fly out 20 applicants who they think are good for the role or less. They go through a series of interviews with you that day. So you'll do 3 to 5 interviews, depending on how competitive it is. And you'll meet with like managing directors, associate, and analysts within the various groups of the bank. And they'll just start asking you questions. Some of them may be behavioral focused. Some of them may be just a full 30 minutes of technical work, another 30 minutes of behavioral. But they'll mix it up on you, just trying to get your flavor. And then they submit all of their feedback to the HR department. And then the HR department sort of sorts it through and figure out who the top candidates are and extends offer to those guys. Sometimes you shouldn't be discouraged if you don't hear back. They may offer. This is why I'm also saying this is so competitive. On the bank side, these applicants aren't just applying for that bank; they're also applying for like 4 other banks. So let's say they get an offer, they have a week to sign, but they can leverage an offer to get another bank that they actually prefer. So some may drop out of the pool just because of that, and then other people can get on. So that's kind of a little flavor of IB. To get into private equity, like I said, they hire folks who are typically, have 3 to 4 years of experience. So typically IB, and it all goes through headhunters. So these are guys, literally you haven't even started your job on the desk yet, and they're already reaching out to first-year analysts at banks to see if you're interested in taking the next step, which is kind of crazy because you haven't even started your IB job yet, but you're already being recruited for a buy-side job. How that works is that, they get the most, it's just because of how the process is, and it gets earlier and earlier. But you essentially could secure a private equity job, 2 years in advance of you actually starting that job. So they would actually interview you, and then you would start 2 years later. So you'll complete out your contract at the IB firm, gain your experience that you need, and then you'll join the private equity shop later. That I would call is the traditional route to get into private equity. So you get recruited almost immediately into IB. You join a firm, you do your 2 years in IB, and then you exit and you join private equity. Other folks, that's more for like the big names, like a Paul, those big private equity shops. Or sort of non-traditional route would be you do 2 or 3 years in IB, and then you decide to go out to headhunters and reach out to them. These headhunters are like Amity, a bunch of other guys, but they find you. Like you can also email them for intro calls, but they'll find you. Like if you work for a bank, you'll be on their radar. They get it from past analysts and associates who have moved on to private equity roles. This is also where networking, like treat everyone well on your job, because they're also going to be the ones who exit, and they're going to be one referring you to these headhunters saying, oh yeah, you should look at this kid and I'll give you his email. So those guys would do 2 years and then start recruiting and then join private equity. So there is a gatekeeper involved. It's the headhunters, and they kind of get you through that. All private equity firms basically outsources their junior recruiting to these firms. Now you can reach out to some smaller shops too, like very lower middle market private equity firms who are looking for someone that has roots in either, let's say a private equity shop is in Austin. They are looking for someone who lives in Austin, and maybe you haven't been on their radar because they use a different agency, but you can reach out to them directly, and sometimes they'll take your call as well. But it's fairly, I would say 90% of recruiting into private equity is done through headhunters.
I want to make sure if it's okay with you. It looks like we're probably going to spend the rest of the time on questions, or if you want to switch it up.
No, this is good. Yeah, I'm all good with questions.
Could you share more on the daily lives and job responsibilities of an investment banker and private equity?
Yep, I can go into this in length. It depends. So IB is very dependent on what group you join. So I would categorize it as there's coverage, which is industry based, and then there's product, which is M&A, equity, or debt. Those are really the big three. So when you're recruiting for IB, it is very good to keep in mind who you're speaking with and like what they do in the bank. So, right. So if you're a coverage banker like me, you cover industries. So I covered industrial. So, you could cover healthcare. You could cover, I don't know, CMT, communication, media, and entertainment. You can cover tech. Some people like that. And the advantage, I'll give you some pros and cons. The advantage of covering industry is that you get exposure to all the products. So if you cover industrials, you would work on M&A transactions, you will work on debt financing transactions, and you will work on equity transactions. You'll get exposure to all those three product lines. And you'll specialize in an industry, obviously, right? So you'll specialize in the companies within that space. There's an advantage to that. And then on the product side, you become a lot more specialized, I would say. You're less of a generalist. You're more specialized on either M&A transactions, you specialize in debt financing transactions, or you specialize in equity raise, which is public offerings and equity offerings. The advantage of being in that product category is then you become a generalist on the coverage side. Like you will work on various industry transactions in M&A. So you'll work, on an industrial deal, focus on M&A transaction. You'll work on a healthcare deal, focus on a merger transaction, et cetera, right? So there's pros and cons of both. You kind of go through the process. This is when I say networking is key and having these calls is good, because you get a flavor of what you really want. Harrison, you mentioned M&A. So you maybe just focus on, I just want to do M&A merger transaction. That's all that's all you're interested in. Right, you're not interested in like debt financing, refinancings. You're not interested in equity offerings. You really just want to do acquisitions. So like that would be your and you don't mind being industry agnostic. Then M&A is probably your best choice when you pursue groups within a bank. When you interview for these places too, they do ask you where your interests are, and they try to, it helps if that, let's say M&A team, for example, like attrition at IB is also very high. So it helps that you want to join an M&A team and they need 5 people, right? So when you have these interviews or have these chats with people, you should ask them what verticals that they're in and like what product line that they're focused on. So that's a little bit of IB. So that was just segmenting what like the various industries and groups in IB. What you do on a day-to-day basis, a lot of it is you put together marketing materials, as I mentioned before. This is when you market the transaction. Either as an M&A deal, an equity deal, or a debt financing deal, you always market the company to investors. So that's going through company overview, putting together like the main sections are, what does the company do? So company overview, marketing overview, so of the industry. So you start doing some industry research as well, like market tailwinds to support this business. You also work on growth, because every investor is like, what's in it for me down the road, right? Like, how's this company going to grow? And then you focus on the financials, explaining any variance in historical financial performance. And that's when you talk to the management team. You say, revenue has been trending this way. Give me some, MD&A, which is management discussion analysis, on each of why your revenue streams or EBITDA has performed the way it has over the historical years. It is very hands-on with, you obviously work in a team. You work with usually an associate, a VP, and an MD. The MD is the guy that covers the client and his support team. You speak with the CEOs. You have regular calls with CEOs and CFOs to learn about the business, obviously, right? To put together marketing materials, you have to know what the company does. So you do have senior interaction on the C-suite a lot. You get to ask questions. You get to get feedback from them on your marketing work, and then you turn comments, etc. So I would say that's the biggest portion is marketing the deal. Depending on what group you're on, if you're on a product team, you work, like if you're on the debt finance side, you may be on a syndicate team, you might be on syndication as well, where you start answering questions from investors. So you market the deal goes to market, investors obviously have questions on what you put together, and then you will do a lot of Q&A answering that. And you'll actually work directly and have calls with investors to answer all of their questions. And that's pretty much it. And then you kind of just fingers crossed that the deal goes through and like everything works out and you have a great closing dinner where everyone celebrates and have a good time. But that's generally how like your day to day. There's also, so that's when you're working on an actual deal. In IB, there's also a phase that you work on, less so on the product side because you're not going to have the product team pitch because they're so busy with actually doing live deals. On coverage, this is something to consider, is you do a lot of pitching. You do pitching to get the business, right? Like if you want, like when I was saying earlier about who your clients are, you'll pitch to private equity firms, you'll pitch to companies to either sell their business, right, if you're on M&A, if you're doing an M&A deal, or to have them do an equity offering. Let's say they're looking to expand and look for growth. You can pitch them on the various products of how to like achieve that, right, how to raise money for that. So you'll pitch those. So you'll do a lot of pitching to and coverage to get those businesses so that you can do the transaction. So that's IB. In private equity, you're really just focused on doing transactions. People come to you with deals. You're vetting deals all the time. We have what's called IC, which is an investment committee, where you show up, every Monday or so with the committee and you present to them like what deals are in the market right now. What are we looking at? Where are we in the process, right? There is, the preliminary stage, which is you receive an NDA, you execute an NDA, you review a SIM, which is, confidential information memorandum, or SIP, confidential information presentation. You can say it's very preliminary. We just got materials for the company. This is the situation and preliminary, right? And then it goes up from there. Then there's IOIs, which is your first stage of indication of interest is what an IOI is. And that stage is when you're saying, look, we've reviewed the materials. This is what we're valuing the business as, and this is what we're bidding in the initial stage. Companies or the seller would always review everyone's IOIs. You can have a broad auction process. You can have IOIs from 30 people, private equities and strategics. And strategics just means a company buying another company, and there's synergies involved. And they'll pick their top 5 bids to move on to the next round. And that's when things get a little bit more intensive. You get access to the management team of the company that's being sold. You get access to a data room that has a ton of data on the company. And you usually do a management presentation and site visits to the facilities of the company. So it's a lot more hands-on. You get to that process. So the whole point is that they open up essentially the floodgate for you to sort of evaluate the company in more depth to firm up your IOI valuation, right? So whatever you bid, your initial bid on, there's a bunch of contingencies, like it's just stuff you don't know that you kind of list out. This is your way of sort of firming up your investment thesis and putting together an LOI, which is a letter of intent, which is typically the stage where you say, this is the firm number I want to buy your company at based on all the information you received. And they typically select 1 to 2 bidders at that point. It just depends. Most of the times, LOI, everyone asks they pick one winner essentially, but sometimes the process could get dragged on for whatever reason. But usually in LOI, they pick one winner, and that's when you sprint sort of to the finish line. You complete your confirmatory due diligence. That's when you hire a bunch of advisors and consultants to come and like look at the business. So they'll do an audit, a Q of E, which is a quality of earnings on the financials of the business. You can also do you can hire industry consultants that essentially do sort of, some work on the company and customer work to make sure that the company is like actually, their reputation in the market is as they're saying, right? So that's sort of like a customer / industry confirmatory due diligence. And at the same time, you firm up your own model of your investment thesis for this business. That's more internal. That's like, this is when you have like, I think I shared an LBO model with you guys historically. That model gets blown up. There's like multiple tabs. You kind of go by product line, by business, by facilities. You kind of go through like nitty gritty. Like you firm all up your assumptions for the next 5 years, and the model gets really intense, detailed model. And all of this is happening at the same time. And you're also trying to raise, for us anyways, we're an independent sponsor, so we have to raise capital. But for other folks who have committed capital, it's usually just a debt financing portion. So that's when you go out to market to finance the debt. So when you buy a business, there's debt and equity. We have to kind of do both at the same time. We have to reach out to equity investors because we're an independent sponsor, and we reach out to debt financing partners. But in most cases, if you already have committed capital, you're just going out to get the debt raised. And so that's when you're going out and hiring a bank, for example, to underwrite the debt. And they'll go out, they'll reach out to investors, and you go through a whole nother marketing process to get that debt raised. You get your commitment letters for your debt, right? That's where, it has all the terms of how long the debt, the duration of the debt, sort of your interest rate on the debt, the amortization. Amortization just means paying down the debt over time at a fixed amount. And all those terms come back. You get bids from everyone. You kind of select your best banks that you want to go with. You raise the capital, and then there's a funding phase where you sign the definitive agreement, which is saying, I will buy you for X. At that point, that's when you have sort of reps and warranty, which is essentially just saying like certain things that the company has to confirm that is correct to their knowledge. That's when you can kind of sue them for this kind of stuff. Like there's any sort of reps and warranty is huge because that's like the one big piece of the contract where you're saying like, if this is false, I can sue you for it essentially, right? That's when companies are liable for whatever they told you. And it's a very lengthy discussion process. So you're negotiating the purchase agreement at this time. And then once that purchase agreement is signed, you're on the hook. There's usually what you see online, like when you see mergers and Wall Street Journal, they talk about like JetBlue and Spirit Airlines, right? Like the breakup fee. That's what it is. It's sort of like you're liable at that point to buy the business and you can't back out. So the purchase agreement gets signed. And then once that's signed, it's just like getting funding from your debt financing and then funding the transaction. And it takes a couple of weeks for people to wire you all the money, and then you close. And then you go out and you celebrate. So that's a little bit of process for private equity firm of like what you're doing. I know I spoke for a long time, so sorry. That was a lot.
And that's fine. Looks like we only have a couple more minutes. But looks like we got 8 questions. So I can pick if you want, or if you want to pick whatever question you think looks good.
Yeah, I didn't. Let's see. I can try to work through these quickly too. There's anything that follow-up questions, feel free to ping. So next one is, how is work-life balance for an investment banker and private equity? I would say if you're looking for a good work-life balance, this is a tough job to go into. I would say you're working a lot. You're spending a lot of time on a computer. You're answering emails on the weekend. It's not one where you're working 9 to 5 is what I would say. There's no fixed hours of when you're working. It is time demanding of your life a little bit. Next one, should we prepare before we have a discussion with someone we reach out to? If so, what should we prepare? You should always prepare. People are spending the time to speak with you, their time in their professional day to speak with you. You should always have sort of what you want out of the call at a minimum. Any initial questions you have. I think it's always good to prep. If it's a 30-minute call, prep for however long the call is supposed to be. I would say, prep a good amount of questions that you will have. It's going to be an interactive call. You don't have to go through a bunch of like technical stuff. Like no one's going to be grilling you. These are all intro calls, but definitely have a purpose of what you want to achieve on that call. If that call is just tell me about IB, then have some IB questions and like where you're interested in and see where the conversation goes. If your purpose at the end of the call is for them to network you to other people, just make sure that is known. And hopefully at that stage, you've already had multiple conversations with them before that, but always let your intentions be known is what I'm trying to get at. And, have something prepared so that it's just not awkward silence when you're on a call with them. But you don't have to overdo it. Based on your experience, do you think there's a big difference between the top 7 U.S. business schools? How do you compare Wharton to McCombs? Undergrad, I'm not sure. But in terms of MBA schools, yes, there's a big difference in terms of what business schools you do want to go to for MBA or MBA. I think it's mainly because of the network, right? Like it's like what networks are you getting for it? I would say it's really the big 3. It's Harvard, Wharton, Stanford, Booth is up there. But yeah, names matter when it comes to MBA school. How would I compare Wharton to McCombs? McCombs, I think, is more, from what I've heard from my peers, like McCombs is stronger in accounting. Wharton is really finance. There's a difference between accounting and finance here. Accounting is more, you're really looking at, when I talk about accounting, it's sort of your PwCs, the big 4, right? It's PwC, I forget the other ones. But it's like the big accounting firms that does the accounting diligence for these transactions. So they're the one that goes into the weeds and they look at trial balances and they make sure that balance sheets and income statements and all the 3 financial statements are matching and that there's no weird reporting, right? It's very technical. Wharton, when I say finance, I'm talking about more of what I'm just describing, which is investment banking, private equity, venture capital, et cetera. And I would say Wharton is one of the top ones up there for finance, and McCombs, I think, is the top one for accounting. It's just the reputations of each, from my opinion, or from what I've heard. When will we be disadvantaged if we don't major in business or finance in college? If so, how do we compensate for that? Like I said, I think the advantage of going or majoring in business or finance in college is very small. I'll take one step back. The advantage of knowing this stuff is very small. Going to a finance and business-oriented school where it is a target school makes your life a little bit easier in recruiting because the banks are already coming to the school to recruit that class. So for example, right, Harvard's a target school. So is Middlebury is a target school for some of these banks as well. But you should ask, like, are you a target school for these banks if you're looking at colleges? And this is something that you really, 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 really want to do. But I would say that is really the major advantage if you're a target school or not necessarily if you major in business or finance. But being a target school is a huge advantage, yes, because it helps with the networking thing, as I said earlier. And how do you compensate for that if you don't major in business? You talk to people, you ask people what books they can read. You ask if they can give you any technical work that they can do. Like, look, I have a ton of technical work I built as I recruited for this stuff. So like, obviously you can ask people like, if you have anything that you can share would be helpful. Like that's how you compensate. You take time outside of in the summer or whatever to study. And this stuff doesn't like always come naturally if you're not in it. So there's maybe a slight advantage if you're in finance and or in B school and you kind of study this stuff. But otherwise, it's just having that communication and reading and spending time on yourself for that. But like I said, these technical questions that they ask you, literally, if you Google like what people ask you in IB interviews, just memorize all of that and you'll be fine for technical stuff.
Mr. Noy,
Yep.
it looks like we've run out of time, but
Okay.
if you'd like, we can forward you these questions if you'd like. But
Okay.
thank you so much for being here. We really enjoyed this.
Good. I'm glad it was helpful.
Yeah, we really appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Yeah. No worries.
Yes.
Anytime. And again, I said, you guys have my email address. If anyone wants to reach out to me individually and just schedule a 30-minute call to
Mhm.
further ask these questions or talk about it. And sorry if we didn't get through all of this. Happy to do that as well.
Thank you so much.
Good luck, guys. Enjoy the rest of the summer.
Have a great day and
right.
great summer too. All right. Hey.
Well,
All right.
I
The
know
next
that the session ran a little bit later than we thought. We'll give everyone about 2-3 minutes for a break. No, it's a little short, but I believe, Tiana, do you know who the next speaker is? I believe it's,
Mr.
yes, Mr. Moody is up next. So we'll give you all a couple minutes for us to get started, and we'll see you then.
Right. Guys, we'll get started. This is our third guest speaker, Mr. Moody. Mr. Moody is the co-founder and managing partner at CFM Wealth Partners and has lots of experience as an investment advisor. Thank you so much for joining us, Mr. Moody.
Thanks for having me. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, so I'll hand it over to you and then you could get started. Let me share your slides. Does that work?
Yeah, I'll ask you to share them in just a little bit, Tiana.
All right, just tell me when you need it.
Yeah, perfect. Okay.
All right.
Well, good morning, everyone. Appreciate you giving me the opportunity to speak, and hopefully you get something out of this. So we'll get going. I thought I'd start by giving you a little bit of personal background on me, and let you know a little bit about what I do and what our company does. And then I've got some concepts that I thought would be beneficial surrounding the topic of long-term investing. So I am an investment advisor, and I went to the University of Texas at Austin, and I graduated in 1998. So I've been living in Austin ever since, and I've pretty much been doing this current role for that whole time period. I got a finance degree at the University of Texas. So I've been managing money since about 2004. I'm married. I have two children. My wife and I have two children. Our older son is 14, and he will actually be a freshman at St. Stephen's this year. His name is Eli. So I'm sure many of you will see him around campus, and he's excited. And then he has a little brother who is 12, and he will be a 7th grader at O'Henry. CFM Wealth Partners is the company that I am an owner of. We are an SEC registered investment advisor. We work with families and individuals and some nonprofits, helping them manage their investments and giving them an advice to help them grow their investments and accomplish their goals. Essentially what we do is, as an investment advisor, we have a company that we work with that is our custodian. They're essentially a bank for investment advisors. So clients deposit checks or send money into this custodian. That's where their assets are held. And then we manage the money. We make buy and sell decisions on behalf of our clients based on what their goals are, what their risk tolerance is, and how much time they have. So that's really the crux of what we do. We work individually with clients to really hone in on those three, which I think are the most three important sort of factors when determining the success of your investment, is clearly identifying, what your goal is. For someone that's working, it could be saving up a nest egg for retirement. It could be a family saving money for their children's education. It could be a family that's just, growing assets to benefit generations to come. Nonprofits might have other goals, but, we really want to hone in and identify clearly what those goals are. We need to know also how much time a client has to accomplish those goals. Typically the longer amount of time you have to accomplish your goal with an investment, the higher the odds of success. And we'll touch upon that here in just a little bit. And the shorter time frame you have to be a little bit careful about how much risk you take, because depending on what type of investment you're investing in, you could have volatility, or things could work against you in the short term that could really inhibit your success. And so, you really have to make sure that what you're trying to accomplish matches your time frame. And then risk tolerance is obviously very important. And these three factors aren't mutually exclusive. So, you might have a lot of time to accomplish your goal. You might have an aggressive goal that you're trying to attain, but inherently you might be a conservative person that can't handle a lot of risk or volatility, and so maybe a risky investment doesn't make sense for you. And then some people are better equipped to handle risk, because there's a very emotional side of investing that comes along, that you have to be able to understand, and really have comfort with, or else maybe the investment isn't right for you. And so once we sort of accomplish those tasks and get comfortable with what our clients are looking to accomplish, we get to work, and we invest in publicly held stocks. We use index funds. We use some managed funds. But primarily, we really believe in several key things. One, long-term investing. Time is going to be your greatest ally. And so the longer time you have, that's going to be in your best interest. So we believe in the long term. We also believe in staying invested. We like to think that we're pretty smart. We have a lot of experience, but the markets move all over the place in the short term, and it's very difficult to predict the direction of the markets in the short term. We don't typically get in and out of the market based on certain signals or anything like that. We primarily just put an allocation in place and leave the money to stay invested through good markets and bad, because typically over time markets will work in your favor. And we also believe in diversification. That's another way to sort of protect yourself from the swings in the market. You might believe, take for instance, energy stocks for the last several years, leading up to probably 1 year ago, were performing very poorly. But now over the last 6-9 months to a year, they've done phenomenally well. So just about when you're ready to kind of write something off and feel like, well, that's not going to work, lo and behold, it turns around in the short term and can provide a lot of opportunity. And so, and rather than jumping around from different investments and different styles of investing, if you have diversification, typically you'll always have something that's working for you. So it's a nice way to protect yourself, while the markets can remain volatile. So that's a little bit of the background on what we do in our firm. We have about 100 clients that we work with. I have a partner, and we have staff, and we are kind of a whole, full service advisor to our clients, giving them investment advice on their portfolios, oftentimes advice on other financial matters in their lives. I was actually having a conversation with someone the other day. When the markets are volatile like they are right now, we often become psychiatrists, because money is emotional, and markets can make you emotional. And so when you have time periods where you see your portfolio balance dropping, you might want to go in and do something to make yourself feel better, but that could actually be the worst thing you can do. So we do a little bit of hand holding when things get tough. And so this job really kind of has many facets to it, all the way ranging from giving financial advice, to kind of being a life coach and a friend and someone people can talk to when things are tough. So there's a big behavioral finance element to this as well, which is kind of interesting. It keeps things unique and different. So I'm going to stop there, and I'm going to kind of pivot now into the topic of the day, which for my presentation, I felt like it might be beneficial given, that y'all are very young, and you're going to have a lot of time to accomplish the goals that you're setting out. Long-term investing is something that can be very powerful, and you all have what is to me the greatest asset, which is time. There's an old saying: you cannot invest for the future in the future. You've got to start now, and even a little bit now will go a long way, and it will be, it's just going to be a really powerful tool to have time on your side. And so I'm going to show you a couple examples of what I'm talking to. So Tiana, if you'll show the first slide that I prepared. This is a chart that was provided by Dimensional Fund Advisors. And this is going to show you here how, when you stretch out your time horizon, how the markets can be very impactful. So this table simply looks at the moves of the market over these various timeframes on a daily basis: 1 year, 5 year, 10 year, and 20 year. This is from 1926 to the end of 2020. And you can see there that on a daily basis, if you just pick any random day, for the S&P 500, which is the largest 500 listed stocks in the United States, you'll see that it's almost a coin flip whether the market will be up or down. It's a little bit more in favor of positive days on a 1 day return basis, but essentially, you roll out of bed one day, the chances of the market being up or down are about 50-50. Look at the difference when you stretch out to a 1 year period. Typically a 1 year period in the market is going to be positive 75% of the time. Those odds are pretty good. Obviously this year, if you've been following the markets and keeping up, we're down and down quite a bit. It's been a struggle for a number of factors. But if you look at the numbers alone, based on the table that you're looking at, there's only about a 25% chance that on a 1 year basis that you will lose money in the market. And you can look at this table, and I don't have to sit here and tell you the numbers, but obviously the more you stretch out your holding period, 5 years, 10 years, and 20, your odds of success are going to be extremely high. So this really does hammer the point home of giving yourself time. And all of you certainly will be investors for more than 20 years, given your age. And so the point here would be, get your money to work, buy as much and as often as you can. You'll get lucky sometimes and be buying when the market's down, and you'll get to pay cheaper prices. Sometimes you'll be buying when the market's up and you'll be paying more expensive prices. But if you continue to plow money into the market on a regular basis, and give yourself, a long runway, you're going to have a very successful outcome. Let's look at the next slide, Tiana. This is a table, and I'm sorry I put this in portrait mode, not landscape. But maybe if you can zoom out, we'll be able to extrapolate this data or see this a little bit more clearly. Okay, so that's good. Thank you. This here is it's called a Callan chart, but we'll often refer to it as the market quilt. And you can do this for any sort of number of investments, but essentially what you've got here is, looking at the markets from 2012 to 2021, and you read this table from left to right. So you can see the columns there for each year, and each box represents an asset class. And these asset classes are reflected by various index funds. And so let's look at the year 2012. The best performing asset class, EM, stands for emerging markets. So these are emerging market stocks, non-US stocks of countries that are not quite developed yet. Going down the list, you've got international stocks, real estate investment trusts, or REITs, large cap US stocks, small cap US stocks, mid cap, EW. Now this is interesting. This stands for equal weight. So this would be the return had you just put the same percentage in each of the various funds. Treasury inflation protected securities or TIPS. That's a fixed income investment. Bonds, which is just a general aggregate bond index, cash, and then commodities. And so in 2012, this chart ranks the returns of each of these asset classes. And then what's interesting is you can just go across the years here and see the variability of returns. And this goes back to my point about diversification, because if you're coming out of 2012, as that year is winding down and you're looking at how these different markets are performing, you might look at this and say, well, look how well emerging markets did. This is where I'm going to put all my money. This is a great asset class compared to these other the 2012 was a good year in the markets, as you can tell, and all these various asset classes. But emerging markets, stood out. So you might have overweighted to emerging markets. You might have said, I'm going to do nothing but emerging markets. And then lo and behold, the very next year, look where emerging markets end up, down near the bottom of the list. And so, that just shows you it's very difficult over the short run. I mean, emerging markets on this chart, just look at that yellow box, it's at the top. And then in 2013 to 2015, it's near the bottom, starts creeping back up. 2017, it's at the top again. 2018, right back near the bottom. So if you, sort of just concentrate in one of these areas, you might have some good returns over the long run, but you might have some volatility. If you look at that equal weight box, the EW, the white box, you can see that it's a very tight band starting in 2012. It's never going to be up at the top, all the way at the top, but it's never going to be at the bottom. And so if you want to smooth out your experience as an investor in these various funds, a good way to hedge out some of the risk and the volatility is to have exposure to all the various asset classes. So, you'll have you never have a year to year where you're at the top or at the very bottom. You're going to always sort of be hugging the middle, but there's just not that variability. So for someone that is looking for the best asset class, that has a strong stomach, that doesn't mind volatility, trying to go in here and pick on one of these, go right ahead and perhaps you'll have some luck. I mean, large caps have done very well. They've stayed at the top of the list. So if you were in that one area, that's worked out in your favor. But it's difficult to do that correctly time over time, and so that's why having a diversified portfolio could make a lot of sense as an investor. Let's go to another table. This next chart is going to talk about a concept that I like to call time in the market versus timing the market. And Tiana, there's the next table, if you wouldn't mind bringing up. Here we go. So this is a very interesting study. This is updated from time to time, but this is looking at the S&P 500 from 1980 to 2012. So very, very long time frame. And had you taken $10,000 and invested in the S&P 500 at the beginning of 1980 and held through the entire time period up through 2012, you would have ended up with a little over $330,000. If you did not have your money in the market on the 5 best days, just the 5 single days. I mean, I don't know the math on the top of my head, but that's a lot of days over that time period. But if you only pick the 5 best days that you missed, look how much your balance would be reduced by, $215,000. And if you miss the best 10, 30, 50 days, you're really decreasing your chances of success. And so, one thing that's been asked of me sometimes as well, could you do this chart if you miss the 5 worst days? Well, yeah, that'd be great, if we had that power, but that's very difficult. I think the general idea here is to show you that, even in a year like this year where the markets are down, the S&P 500 is down roughly 10% year to date. But we've had a number of days where the market has been very strong. And this year, if you, let's say the market was weak for, a month or two, and you just said, I can't take it anymore. I'm just going to sell my stocks and wait for things to get better, and then I'll get back in. If you missed 2 or 3 days this year where there was really strong turns, and the market went up, instead of being down 10%, you might be down 25%. I mean, there's been some very strong days in the market, even in a very weak year. And so the point is, no one can time the market. You might be able to do it once, twice. You might get lucky, several times, but it's very, very, very difficult, even for the smartest and most seasoned investors. And I've been doing this for 20 years, and I can tell you, I've not tried to do it, but even in my mind, sometimes when I think, well, I think the market's going to do this, that, or the other, I don't have a crystal ball. No one else does. It's very difficult to predict. So, putting your money in and keeping it in, will really give you, very high odds of success. The last table I want to look at, this is to me, a very interesting study. So, when you look back at the history of the markets and of some of the individual securities out there, this is a table that I put together for a client. NVIDIA, some of you may know this company. They're a semiconductor company. They do chips for graphic processing units. They're big in artificial intelligence, data centers. They have been a phenomenally well-run company with a great leader. They have a unbelievable vision, and they have grown quite a bit. Their stock price has done phenomenally well over time, and their company has grown substantially over time. There are a lot of cases out there. You could look at NVIDIA, you could look at Apple, you could look at Alphabet. Tesla is another great example of these stocks where, you look at the chart of the stock price, or you just look at the success of the company and you think, gosh, that was just the biggest no-brainer in the history of Earth. If I could just go back in time and put all my money in Tesla or NVIDIA or Apple, boy, I would have, thousands and thousands of dollars, and that would have been so easy. But I think what this table is going to show you is that it's far from easy. And hindsight can be very clear, but you've got to have a tremendous amount of guts and courage to be able to, have a lot of success. I mean, it just doesn't come easy. So the top left, Tiana, will you zoom this a little bit? I want to look at this top left part of the table here. So this is through May 27th. NVIDIA at the end of May 27th closed at $188 a share. And that top left table will show you that. Since then, it's slightly under that. It's still in the probably $182 range. But at the end of May, it was around $188 a share. Going back to 2002, NVIDIA was trading. These are split adjusted prices because the stock has split some. But in June of 2002, NVIDIA was trading for $2.69. And in May of this year, was trading for $188. So that's a return of 6,900%. The S&P 500 over that same time frame has grown 300%, which is really, really good. But if you looked at this table, you might have said, well, gosh, I wish obviously I would have just loved to have owned NVIDIA, and that would have been such a great way to make a big return. The issue is the volatility that you have to withstand over time. So the way this table reads is you start at drawdown 1, and this first drawdown that I looked at here showed that from June of 2002 until October of 2002, which is not a very long period, NVIDIA went from $2.69 a share to 68 cents. That's a drop of 75%. Over that same time period, the S&P 500, just the stock market in general, dropped 22%. So obviously it was a tough time for the market, but NVIDIA got crushed. Now, some people would be able to hold on Some people would probably even have the courage to maybe add a little bit if they still believed in the company. But a fair amount of people would have said, you know what, something's not quite right with this company. I'm telling you, the news back then would have, everything you would have read would have said, tough time for NVIDIA, sales are slowing, the market's tough, you don't want to own high growth, whatever. And you would have had a lot of people selling and taking some big losses. If you look immediately to the right at that subsequent rally, you can see that from June of 2002 until November of 2002, just, what is that, a month, a little over a month, the stock went from 68 cents to $1.43. Now, you didn't get back to your original cost of $2.69 a share, but the S&P rallied 17% and NVIDIA came back 110%. So, that's a lot of volatility, but if you stayed with it, you were able to capture back, a pretty big amount of return. If you go down, you can just kind of, start looking at these other drawdowns in the subsequent rallies. Drawdown 2, you lost from, you got back to $1.43 a share and immediately almost lost 50%. But then from February of 2003 until April of 2004, the stock went from 81 cents to 223, which was 175% return. And it almost got you back to even. So anyway, this, look at drawdown 3, you lose another 64%. And then subsequently from 2004 to 2006, you've gained, you have a 560% rally after that third drawdown. The market was up 24% and NVIDIA was up 560%. And that new price in May of 2006 is now, basically double the price of your initial investment. So you doubled your money over a 4-year period, but you've had a drop of 75%, 43%, and 64%. So, you can take this table and continue to scroll through here and see drawdown 4, drawdown 5. I mean, there are drops of 75%. Look at the drop in 2007 and 2008. You're looking at an 82% drop. I mean, you're now back below where you were on your initial investment. I would find it very difficult for someone, on their own that didn't have experience, that didn't have courage, guts, whatever you want to call it, that could have been able to hang on during all of these, violent sell-offs. But every time you stuck with it, it came back. And then the biggest rally, I mean, look here at drawdown 7. This is from 2011 to 2012. NVIDIA went from $6.42 a share to $2.97, almost back to the original price. So from 2002 if you would have bought this in 2002 to 2012, that's a 10-year period, you would barely be above break even. And you might have just said, you know what, I gave it my best shot, but clearly this was not a great investment and I'm out. Well, look what it did from 2012 to 2018. The stock went from $3 a share to 70, which was almost a 2,300% return. It's just kind of mind-blowing to look at something on the surface like NVIDIA. Apple may not have been as volatile as this, but you certainly would have had several periods of 30, 40, 50% drawdowns. Same is true with Tesla. In order to have this really good long-term success, you've got to be willing to ride out these sell-offs in order to have the long-term success. And I'm picking on NVIDIA here, and it's a shining example of a company that's done phenomenally well. But this is true of the market. The stock market itself. I mean, the S&P 500 is very common to have sell-offs. Obviously in 2008 and 9, the S&P 500 fell about 55% from top to bottom. In 2018, it fell about 20% at the end of the year before rallying. During the COVID crash, it fell about 35%, about 6-7 weeks. This year, it was down 20% at one point. These are all very common occurrences. People look at market sell-offs as something kind of rare. It's very uncomfortable, but it's like we like to say sell-offs are a feature of the investment process, not a glitch. There's nothing wrong. There's nothing to be fixed. It comes with the territory. And so if you're going to be an investor in securities, long-term investments, and you want to generate a return, you've got to be willing to handle those kind of risks. Obviously, single stocks like NVIDIA or Apple or Tesla are going to have a lot more volatility. The payoff could be a lot greater. If you want to forego that volatility for a smoother ride, you could be diversified and just own the S&P 500. You may not have the amount of success that you would have in a single stock, but you'll protect yourself, because I'm picking on NVIDIA here, which is a clear winner, but there are a lot of stocks that you could have owned for 20 years that you would have lost money on, and it might have been better owning the S&P 500. So the main point of this table, though, is to show you that, even the winners, even the best stocks are going to have violent periods of sell-offs that will be very difficult to withstand. But if you can do it and you have patience and courage, perhaps you can see some pretty outsized gains, over the long run. So those are my prepared slides. I thought I would just kind of give you, kind of an overview of some concepts that, I think are beneficial for all types of investors, but specifically for young investors. And I'm going to close with a story here that our old rector at Good Shepherd told one morning, and I think it's very applicable for investors. And I think if you can think about this, it'll really help you kind of conceptualize what it means to be a long-term investor. So he told this story about a guy that had a ranch back in the 1970s, and this rancher thought it would be a good idea to have a camp for kids. And so the first year he had a camp, there were, a dozen to 15 kids that signed up, and they came for a week, and he had a cabin built, and they did activities and all this kind of stuff. And one of the things they did was they planted a tree, basically a baby tree, and they all got around and, dug a hole and put the tree in, watered it, staked it. And they stood around this tree and took a picture to commemorate this tree going in the ground to mark the first year of this camp. And 25 years after the camp had initially opened and it went on to have a lot of success, he brought in those original campers to have a reunion and mark this celebration. And they all got around this tree, which now, of course, is, way up in the air, and it has a huge trunk and roots that are really strong and branches that spread out and provide a lot of shade. And so he gets these adults now, and they get around this tree and take a picture, and he has it framed, and he sends it out to them with an inscription. And it says, the best time to plant a tree is 25 years ago. The second best time is today. And, the point of that, the lesson that we were given in church was basically that, there's no better time than right now to work on something. We all have something in our lives, whether it's a difficult conversation or an assignment for school or, a book on your summer reading list that, you've got to tackle. And you just keep thinking, not now. But time goes by quickly. And, I took that to heart and really applied that to what we do with our clients, because there's always a reason not to do something. Inflation is high. We might be having a recession. Markets are volatile. Whatever the case may be, there's always a reason not to invest. But, you're going to look up 5, 10, 15 years from now, and you're probably going to look back on today and think, golly, if I just would have invested some money in 2022, look how well I would have done. The markets, they go up and down over the short term, but over time they do pretty well. And so I think planting those seeds today and continuing to nurture your portfolio should give you some pretty good success over the long term. I will stop there. That's kind of what I prepared to share today. And if you guys want to, you know, offer up, if there people have questions or whatever, I'm certainly willing to spend some time and address some questions. I know we're right at the end of my time period, but I'm available.
Well, I guess we'll wait for some questions. I have a question actually.
Sure.
So, since you're looking at long-term investing, and one of our speakers yesterday kind of alluded to how he doesn't really look at how the market reacts today because it's kind of irrelevant in the long term. What would you say is the average day that of work that you do? Like how would you describe your average day of work?
That's a great question. I think what's unique to my profession is that every day there's something new. Um, you know, there's just always activity going on, and it ranges from, like, for instance, today one of the things I worked on is we have some clients that have cash balances. We typically stay fully invested if clients are giving us portfolios to manage. Most of that money is going to go into the markets, but some clients are a little more averse, or let's say they're more averse to risk than others, so they might hold some cash in their portfolios. Well, with the action of the Federal Reserve this year raising interest rates, treasury rates have gone up quite a bit. And so if you have cash in a bank account or a savings account, you might be getting very little interest. If you have a money market account, you're getting very little interest. You can buy a 1-year treasury bill, which is backed by the US government, and it's going to pay you 3.25% interest. And so we've been going through some of our portfolios where we have high cash balances, and we're having conversations with clients about, using these treasuries as a way to really generate some income. 3.25% is not a lot in the grand scheme, but it beats zero. And if you're just going to hold cash for the short term, that might be a good solution. So that's something that we've been working on. Have a new client that signed up with us late last week, and so we're working with that client right now to clearly identify their goals and risk tolerances, so we can start building out their portfolio and investing that money. We have clients might call in and have questions about utilizing a line of credit for a real estate purchase, and so we'll work with our bankers to start having that conversation. So there'll be days where it's very quiet. Our clients have been trained to not pay attention to the day-to-day moves of the market. So every once in a while, we'll receive questions about, what do we think is going to happen with inflation or interest rates, or where's the market headed? But most of our clients know that that's not how we think, or we don't want them to think that way. So most of our work really is just proactive communication, reaching out to clients, telling them how they're performing, telling them how, some of the actions that we've been taking in their portfolio. We're wrapping up earnings season, so some of our, all of our stocks have reacted various ways to their earnings reports. If we've had some standout winners, we might, communicate that to clients. And so, every day is a little bit different. It's kind of fun. You basically wake up, see what's happening in the markets, see what activities coming in from clients, and then tackle it. I've had plenty of times where I've come in and had a to-do list and didn't get to one item just because there's a flurry of activity. But the other benefit of being a long-term advisor is, not having to get caught up in the day-to-day. Is I'm not sitting here looking at charts and graphs and having to make these difficult decisions on whether to buy or sell or, hedge or whatever. We're doing our homework on the front end and buying quality companies, and then we're sitting back and letting them do their thing.
It looks like we have two questions in the Q&A. First is, how do you think your business education at UT Austin prepared you for success in for your success in career?
That's a good question. It's interesting when you look back on things. UT Austin's a great school. I'm very proud of my time there and the education I received. It would be very difficult, I think, for me to pull back specific elements of the things that I learned in terms of, course materials or projects. so it's not specific, like skill sets I learned with, application. I would say it was more about critical thinking, and bigger concepts like teamwork, collaboration, communication, um, you know, uh, critical thinking skills, working on projects and timelines and presentations. All those factors really, I think, were very strong skills that I picked up. Whether it was, various economic models or, supply and demand theories or all the kind of nitty gritty stuff. It's hard to kind of retain that because you're kind of drinking through a fire hose and you're young and you're balancing so many different things. And some of that wouldn't even apply to what I do today. Some of the things I learned and a lot of the concepts that were drilled into me, I may not be using on a daily basis, but the way to solve problems, the way to communicate with others, with my team, with my clients, the behavioral finance aspect of things was very, very critical. So I think that's where the education part comes in, and the more you realize that, I've kind of got a photographic memory. So in school, I always thought, okay, we're going to have, whether it's exams or quizzes or papers, it's like just memorize the material and then go regurgitate it. What's interesting about a lot of colleges is as you sort of go through the ranks, first, second, third, and fourth year, you start getting up into those, junior and senior years of colleges. There's less exams, there's more group work, there's more projects and presentations, because that's really going to get you ready for the real world environment. So that's, I think, some of the biggest benefits that I received.
Another question, which is a little similar, but it's how do you think we could prepare for a career like yours? Or I guess another way to ask that would be like, what can we do now?
Good question. I think there's my career specifically is pretty unique. When I was coming out of school, coming out of UT, as a finance major, I looked at my options as I really didn't even look at what I'm doing now as an option. You typically the coursework we're doing is financial analysis, investment banking type of projects, mergers and acquisitions, corporate finance, all these things that you think you're going to go to New York or San Francisco or whatever and do these working for these big Wall Street firms and crazy hours and all this kind of stuff, and that was interesting to me. But I loved Austin. I wanted to stay in Austin, and so that was the first decision that I made. And then I was kind of trying to think about what I might want to do, and so I was lucky enough to meet a couple of people that were already established in this profession. And they brought me in because they needed someone younger to start learning the business and helping them manage their clients. And so I was very fortunate in that regard. So I would say the ability to network and meet as many people as you can that are in the field that you're interested in could be very beneficial to you. In my profession, managing money for families and individuals, I'm 42. The average age of an advisor in my profession is closer to 60 years old. If you think about it, people with a lot of money want to trust people that have experience and knowledge and have seen a lot of markets. And so, if you come out of school, undergrad school, and you're 23, 24 years old, it might be difficult to become an advisor and go out and get the kind of assets that you need to, really start producing an income and building, something for you and your family. Some are able to do it. You might come from a family that can provide some seed money and get you going. You might have some good contacts that could get you going. But it's very difficult for young advisors to break in on their own. Way back in the day, you've probably seen this in movies, but cold calling was a big deal. And the way people made it as advisors is they went to work for a firm like a Merrill Lynch or Morgan Stanley as a young advisor, and they were given a desk and a phone and, you know, a phone book, and you basically just called people. I mean, it's hard to imagine. You can't really even do that anymore. Most of that's outlawed, but that's a way that businesses were built. I mean, my partner, who's not one of my co-founding partners, who's no longer with us, that's how he built his, you know, a big chunk of this practice was just calling people in the community. And, you know, of course, you know, we live in an age where if someone calls you on your phone and you don't recognize the number, you don't even pick it up. But back then, you know, people welcomed a phone call on their landline, and they'd take a call and, you know, hey, I'm Edward Moody from CFM, and do you have a minute today to talk about some interesting investment ideas? And people would say, yeah, sure. I mean, can you imagine that happening today? No way. So, you know, I think if you're interested in being an advisor like I am in this particular field, my best advice to any of you listening that would want it would be to reach out, you know, talk to people like me, talk to other advisors that may have presented on these panels. You know, talk to ask your parents, you know, who are they working with, or who do they know in the community that that does this for a living, and go talk to them and really build those relationships. Because what's going to happen is, as advisors age, they don't have people to turn their business over to. And my partners saw that. And so I was lucky to be in a position to come in. And now, you know, I'm running a very nice business because they believed in me. And at some point, I'm going to have to find someone else that will be my successor, because we have multi-generational families that we work with. And, you know, we had a new client that we signed on recently, and one of their big questions was, you know, how do we make sure that not only we're taken care of, but our kids and grandkids, you know, so they want to make sure that that we have people on our team that can take care of their family for years to come. So, you know, there's going to be a big need for younger advisors, and it's just about getting out there and making those connections.
And it looks like we have one last question, and it's, what is your criteria for a quality company?
That's a great question. We don't run I wouldn't say we have a you know, sort of a theme that we rely on. You know, we're not all about value stocks or all about dividend stocks or only international or only growth. You know, you probably gotten the gist that we like to have diversified portfolios, but we have clients. Some clients come to us. I mean, we have clients that are, you know, almost 80 years old that give us a lot of money and say, I want to be as aggressive as I can and generate as much return as I can, because I want this money to benefit my kids and grandkids. And we have other clients that say, look, here's some money, you know, I want to get a little bit of return, but I don't want to take a lot of risk. And so we have to listen to each individual client and build a portfolio around their needs. But if let's say I have a client that just comes in, and this is true of most of our clients, they're just going to give us a chunk of money and say, manage this as you best see. You know, this is for the long term. You know, we want it to grow over time. We're okay with volatility. We don't want too much. You know, so we're not going to buy like a single stock. We're going to build out a portfolio of, say, 40 companies or 50 companies. We want, you know, I think what I would be looking for would be diversification. So we want to make sure that we've got, you know, large size companies, some mid-sized companies, and some small size companies, because small companies can grow into mid-size and large size companies, and there's a lot of opportunity there. But we like quality. You know, strong balance sheets are important. You know, companies that don't have to rely on a lot of outside financing, you know, that don't have a lot of debt on their balance sheet. That's another thing. Some people will use, you know, dividends as a metric. If a company can pay out a dividend, that means they're pretty financially healthy. And, you know, I would say we want something that's strongly positioned in its industry, that probably doesn't have a lot of competition, where the barriers to entry in their industry are very large. Because you want to own companies that, you know, we kind of have the Warren Buffett approach. Like, you know, my holding period hopefully is forever. You know, I don't want to have to buy and sell stocks all the time. I want to identify some companies that are growing and that will continue to grow, that I don't have to worry about, and that I can just tuck away into a portfolio and feel good about. Recurring revenue is another key component. I mean, Apple has built itself into a behemoth because of its iPhone and because of a lot of its hardware technology, but they're really continuing to be a behemoth because of their subscription, their service model. And so, when money's coming in every single month from subscriptions, that from millions and millions of people around the world, that's a pretty strong, placehold to have to build success off in a business. So those are some of the key factors that we'll look at.
And we're just about out of time, but it looks like we got one extra question.
Okay.
Do you suggest we major in business or finance to prepare for a career like yours, or do you think it would also be valuable for us to major in different fields?
Well, yeah, I mean, I think having a focus on finance or business would be critical. If whether it's a dual major, whether it's a major and a minor, I think business, whether you do what I do or you work in finance or not, I mean, even if you're going to become an educator or if you're going to be in healthcare or whatever, technology, having a business foundation is going to be very critical just for your life in general. Running your own personal finances, having conversations. You might be into technology, but you might want to own a business, and so knowing business concepts could be very important. Within my particular field, I mean, my business partner, her name is Jolynn Free. She past board member at St. Stephen's, a wonderful lady, and she's been doing this a very long time. She has a Master of Fine Arts, so she didn't even study business in college or grad school. And so, but she worked in a field for a while where she was around people and was good at building relationships. And so, doesn't necessarily mean, to work as an investment advisor that you have to have some strong business background. I mean, it helps, but I would say, when you're studying, make sure you have some business foundations, but study what you're interested in. There's times I look back and think, wow, it would have been cool to be a little more into some history or fine arts coursework when I was in college. I mean, I don't regret that I have a finance degree, but a well-rounded education is going to take you very far. But some sort of business foundation would probably be suggested.
Well, looks like we're out of questions, but thank you so much for coming and seeing us again. We all really enjoy it.
Well, I appreciate you having me, and anyone that's listening or watching can get in contact with the host. I'm happy to, you can give out my cell phone number, and anybody can text me. You can email me. I did come out last year and speak at the school, and a couple of students, followed up and asked some questions, and I'm happy to offer my time and resources. So please reach out if you'd like to, and hope everyone has a successful school year. And I'm sure I'll see some of you around campus when we're out there with our kiddos. So thanks again.
All right, thank you so much for coming, and sorry for holding you.
That's all right. No, I'm happy to be here. So good luck for the rest of your conference, and take care.
All right, thank you so much.
Bye-bye.
Have a great day.
So we're gonna take like a 3-ish minute break, or 4-minute break, I guess, and we'll see you back, or we'll see everyone back around 12:01 for Mr. Krauss portion of our session. So we'll be back then.
Hi, Marshall Cloyd. I'm a member of the investment club at our school, and our speaker today is Mr. David Tsao. He is the founder and partner of F50 Ventures, and he also founded the Silicon Valley Entrepreneurs and Startups, and it's the largest startup community on the West Coast. So we're honored to have you here, and kind of, how did you get into venture capital, I guess, to start? What led to you pursuing that?
Well, so about 15 years ago, I was running a small company And I sold the company right after the 2008 financial crisis. I was wondering if I get lots of help from many different friends in the industry, I could be in a far better situation. So I created a community called Silicon Valley Entrepreneurs. Initially just to connect the friends, and then later in 2013, it became the largest community in West Coast. So I talk with many my influential friends. What can I do to help other entrepreneurs? So a couple of my friends said, can we invest into the best of the best startups? So we created the I-50 venture fund in 2014.
What criteria do you look for in like a startup founder when you're thinking about investing in them?
Well, so there are two things we typically look for earlier stage investment. The first thing we look at the sectors. It's pretty difficult to develop expertise in particular sector. So typically an investor will only focus in few sectors. For myself, I invest into deep tech, health tech, and construction tech. So lately, I had been spent more of my effort into health tech, particularly like aging, longevity, chronic disease. And second sector we are looking at is construction tech and prop tech. The number two we are looking at is the founders, particularly for early stage startups. Founder is probably about 70, 80% of the company, or maybe 90% reason we invest into a company, because it takes like 8 years, sometimes 12 years, sometimes even longer to build a very successful startups. So to find the right founder has the gut, has the willingness, has persistency to pursue the success of the startup is very important.
You'd also mentioned earlier that you'd started a company previously. Can you tell us like what led to you doing that, and the difficulties, the challenges you encountered, and kind of your inspiration, why you wanted to do it, I guess?
Well, so one of the company I started is called Knowledge Surf. I started in 2007, 2006. Has been well. We are doing like app development for iPhone and Android. At that time, it was so new, and everybody's lots of companies looking for solutions to move their business into the new smartphone platform. So there's a strong demand in that area. So I was a long-term programmer. I manage engineer teams for several companies. Well, this is something the market needs, and also we can build value for those people. So me and a couple of my friends, we start this company to like iPhone app and Android development. Of course, it's not an easy task, because at that time, like 14 years ago, developing for 14 years ago to develop something for iPhone is extremely difficult, and there's the IDE, the tools were not as good as today. Same thing as Android. Android is so new. At that time, most people don't even know what is Android. There are lots of different challenges to find the right people and train the right staff to do the technologies. So of course, although I've been managing engineer team for many years, but still it's kind of a challenge to manage such new, they call it frontier technology at that time, because there's just not enough information, not enough documentation, not enough third-party training to do the stuff. You basically lots of stuff you have to try. You have to and go to like a no man's land and try something new without enough information. It's a very risky move.
what led to you pursuing computer science as a major? Like, were you passionate about it? Were you like, had you took a coding class and liked it, something like that? Were you a math kid who wanted to do it?
Well, to be honest, the question you asked me, it's very different for you to expect answer from the new young generation. I'll give you an example. So at that time, when I was in college, that's like a long time ago, computer is something super cool because, I'm not sure you know the old days, we have to wear you have to take off the shoes and do the computer data center, you have to access the computer. You don't have computer at home because computer is super expensive. So for me at that time, I'm pretty good at mathematics, is very good in my school. So I think, well, this is something super cool. I want to learn something very interesting. To be honest, at that time, we don't have enough information to say, oh, this is something that can make money or get some bad future. It's not something we're thinking at that time. It's just purely something very new and very cool.
Also, kind of, besides capital, what do founders typically need from investors? Like, do they need how much advisory? Do they need like an advisory role? Do they need someone who can get them connections in the industry? What do they typically need?
Well, so founders need lots of things. They need people to hire people for them to find their team members. They need people to find their clients. They need people to find the next investors. They need to find and the business partners. So founders need lots of stuff. So I'm not sure you guys are familiar with the business model of Andreessen Horowitz. Andreessen Horowitz is one of the newest player in the Sandhill in Silicon Valley. So they developed a model, and with only I think a few years ago, 5-6 years, they only have 100 over staff, but only 8 partners. Most of the supporting staff. They're very, very smart, very experienced supporting staff to support entrepreneurs. So the point I'm trying to make is that entrepreneurs, the founder, need lots of things. The investor can give to them is very limited, and also depends on what type of information. For instance, I know lots of people in different sectors. For example, in health sector and also in construction sector. But the person I know may be valuable to the startup I invested in, may not, because depends on what they need in a particular sector at a particular time. So in general, we try to be valuable for the founders. We don't want to create too many distraction to founder. Introduce people is sometimes good, sometimes bad, because you can introduce we call lots of friends does not create any real business. So we call it low value introductions. So to me that there are lots of things we can do, but in the core there are 2 things. In general, founder looking for, expecting from the investors. Number one is understanding the industry, the sector. The knowledge of the sector is very important, particularly for earlier stage investors, particularly in the many different unknown fields. If you have relevant knowledge or expertise in a particular sector, for instance, construction tech is a sector which is not a hot sector. Not the hot sector I've been pursuing for many years in many Silicon Valley investors' eyes. But it is a very niche sector, and you need to have lots of knowledge in order to do that. And once you have the knowledge, then your advice, your suggestions, your introductions will be far more valuable to the founders in comparison if you don't just make general introductions. So to me, the sector knowledge, sector expertise is something very important for earlier stage founders. Number 2, I think the founders, particularly for earlier stage founders, are looking for lots of people. So people we call the connector. You want to connect the founder with recruiter, with engineering resources, with contractors, with a marketing agency. So if you can connect lots of different type of resources, then it will make more valuable for the founders.
What kind of traits, personality traits, character qualities set apart successful founders from unsuccessful founders in your experience?
Well, let's do this way. So there's a statistic that said 98% of startup failed. So it's very difficult to have one simple formula to separate winner from losers. If that's easy, then probably they don't need so many VCs because it's so easy to judge who is a winner. The reality is that I give you an example. So I started learning lots of ways to judge a founder. Like example, we do lots of interviews with founder and ask your experience, why you're doing this. Why is one very important question, and we need to judge whether the founder has the guts to really carry on the why and deliver it. But that judgment does not have a very good formula to win. So it also depends on timing. I gave you another example. So let's say Facebook Mark Zuckerberg. So if he started a company 3 years after the time, he probably just one of the hundreds or thousands of founders who are doing something interesting. I wouldn't say be a leader. So it's the chance he's to build Facebook after 3 years is significantly reduced by 99.9%. So it's not just a little bit reduction. So timing is very important to me. Judge a founder. Founder is to me, founders' willingness to carry on a company, really to execute the vision for a long time, and because long time is the most important things. It's a very sophisticated process to judge the person has that capability or not. To me, that we made nearly 40 investments, and we have 3 IPOs, and we sold 4 companies. Sometimes you can say, oh, this company looks good. Does it truly amazing? You're not sure. But sometimes the other founders say, oh, this guy is really, really amazing. We think he can do it. But actually the company failed after a few years. To me, there's many different factors you'll be looking at fund, but one thing you'll be looking at is the founder's vision and mission has to be associated with him personally. Could be his experience, could be his past history, could be his just personality, could be his hobby, something which give him enough reason to move on when he faces challenges and difficulties. And also, on the other hand, he need to have enough knowledge and expertise in order to win in that unknown sector. So basically, in a nutshell, his ability to run a company for over like 8 to 15 years is what we are looking for the chapter.
Do you have any advice to someone our age who wants to get into venture capital?
Hold on. So you're talking about venture capital. So depends on who do I suggest with. So to be honest, all this is an investment conference. I wouldn't recommend young people to go to venture capital directly. We strongly suggest that you guys are very smart. Kids go to become entrepreneurs, work for the investment firm, work for like businesses for a few years before you enter into a venture capital business. Venture capital is I call it a very risky business, and as you know that in 2008, that's the beginning of the mobile internet, and until like 2000, I would say. 19 to 2019, the stock actually is doing very well. Most of venture capitalists make lots of money on paper, but in 2020, the pandemic came and lots of people are losing, and other people make money. And right now, this year since February, the market has gone down a lot. This means that lots of VCs are losing money. So because the booming of the mobile internet since 2008, lots of new venture capitals were created since then. So the venture capital business become a very competitive business, far more competitive than 10 years ago. So I do have a slides. So do you want me to share?
Yes, that'd be great.
But just keep going. If you have any questions, just go ahead. Can you give me permission to share? So do you have another question you'd like to ask me?
Try sharing again. I think you could do it now.
So I prepared a topic called long-term investing and technology venture ecosystem. I call it investment over the curves. Particular is very relevant for this few years because 2020 we have a pandemic and 2021 we have the real estate booming and now we have the stock crash. So I'd like to talk a little bit about how to invest over the curves. So just a little bit myself, I think it looks like you already know on my bio. So I created F50 Ventures that run a platform company called F50. We run an investor network. I have two IPOs, one upcoming IPOs, and sold the company to Intel, Google, and Airship, and a couple other companies. So I have a couple personal exits in the past as well. So right now I'm looking at health tech, construction tech, and also real estate investment. So my real estate investment is in Texas and Hawaii. So F50. So the reason I talk about the ecosystem is that F50 built a small ecosystem. We have I started the Silicon Valley's largest entrepreneur community. I also built F50. We call it Investor Network, and also we run conference called Global Capital and Summit is one of the largest international investor conference. And those are some of the industry leaders I met last many years. And by the way, so I moved to Austin, Texas, just 1 day before Elon Musk became the richest person on the planet. That's January last year. Okay, so we have a couple. Yeah, this is some of our portfolios on our ventures as well as our platform companies. And this is my platform company. We run 26 different summits, and we presented over 500 companies at our platform last 8 years. And this is Silicon Valley Entrepreneur Meetup. We have monthly hiking demo. Mixer, lots of different events running the community events in Silicon Valley. And we have a very active YouTube channel. Feel free to go to our YouTube channel. It's F50. You can find on YouTube. So let's talk about long-term investing. Long-term investing is very difficult. Why is very difficult? So because most people cannot hold that long. Most people sold their stock far before that. So anybody familiar with this chart? This is Warren Buffett's company's investments. As you can see, that his performance is far better than the SP 500 index. Well, why if it's so easy just to hold the stock, and there should be like 1,000 Warren Buffett, but there are only few Warren Buffett? Because there's so many reasons to sell. So I've used a stock example. You can use another asset like your house, a home, or maybe art or something. You can find lots of different reasons to sell. This is an example. Just give some examples: .com bubble and a financial crisis. And just last few years, myself experienced. I came here last century, 1999, and .com bubble at 2001. And 2008, I hold several homes in my hand, and the financial crisis. And I have been holding home so long and tired of real estate investing at that time. And there are lots of small bubbles. And I'm sure last few years, the 2020, the COVID, the stock get down, lots of companies get busted. Of course, few companies, particularly the remote working sector, get boosted during the COVID. And 2021, there's real estate booming. And this year we have stock market crash. So let's take a long term. This is from like 1850. This is a statistic from third party number. Okay, it is more like illustration of a different asset class, the SP 500 and gold and silver and oil. And sorry, it does have property. I'm looking for another image has property here. So give you an example of perspective of different asset class, the performance over 100 years of time. You can see that upside down, if you look long term, upside down is very normal. So now Warren Buffett make lots of money by just hold stock very, very long. That's not an easy task. That's an extremely, extremely difficult task. Why? But let's just use one of the small example. This stock TCS, and if you hold for long enough, you make lots of money, lots of money. But if you zoom in any particular time, like 2015, you can see that there's many different reasons. You could be scared, it could be many reasons. 2015 is not a time which everybody sells the stock, but you still can find lots of reasons you can sell this particular stock. And that's what I want to give you an example. And this is another example of different asset class performance over a very long time, like say again, like over 100 years. If you invest cash, if you invest in gold or invest in bond or invest in stocks, the performance are very different with each other. So I just want to show you an illustration. Not necessarily I'm trying to convince one sector is particularly better than the other sector. Here's the reason why. It's all about the timing. Let's say if you invest a stock in 2020, you're probably going to lose 95% of your money within a year. But if you are persistent enough to invest in stock in 2002, means the year right after the dot-com burst. So basically, you're probably going to make tons of money. You're going to far more than most of people can ever make. So use a very simple example. This is 2008 financial crisis, and the property price decreased a lot, and the home price. So if you buy a home in 2010 or 2011, you'll be an absolute winner in the real estate market. But if you buy the home in 26 or 27, you likely will be underwater for a while, unless you bought a home in Palo Alto. I don't know the Austin yet, but if you bought a home in Palo Alto, probably you can still triple or 300-400 returns easily. But if you bought a home in Tracy, which is 2 hours from Palo Alto, probably you can lose 70% of the home value. So these are the different challenges of different asset class. The point I'm trying to make is that there's no safe investing. So just safe is about is just rating on your heart. Okay, is this risk high enough for you to low enough for you, dear enough to take? You can make a decision. And at any given time, the risks are very different. If you look from long term, yes, most of asset class will make money. Depends on how long you can hold. So basically, the long-term investing strategy is you put the seed money in a good class of assets, and you wait and wait and wait. The question is how long when you want to sell. So I want to use since I'm a technology investor. You already have very good speakers talk about different type of investment, including real estate and other stock investment. I want to talk about technology investment. This is we call the the startup path we call the valley of death. I think I mentioned this one before. So basically, depends on when do you want to invest in a company. If the sectors, if the company is super early, you have a very good chance to lose money. If the company have enough indicator that is going to win, then the stock value increase a lot. So it's very difficult to jump in at a very right timing. I use another diagram to show you. This is we call it time capsule. This is the time capsule. This is actually a diagram I found from 2013. That's like almost 10 years ago. This from IDG to show the different technology trends on the different on the stage of the different technology trends. I will give you an example. So let's use say quantum computing. That's a pretty cool technology there. In 2013, it just started to boom. But actually, many companies get funding after that. So basically, if you invest early enough and the chance and the company win, you're going to make lots of money. But of course, the chance of the company going to lose actually is pretty high. And if you invest a company already past the initial hype, so basically there are lots of unknowns, and at this stage, because this stage of the company, and past this stage, this means the company has far smaller chance to fail and far higher chance to win. Means the sector, the entire sector. This means it's a better chance to invest. But keep in mind, at that time, if everybody knows the company is going to win, that means that the stock price can be a lot higher. The question is that when do you want, if you want to invest in technology, when do you want to invest? Is here the beginning is a good time? Is here a good time? Here's a good time. So the honest truth, the reality is that if you bet right on the winner, if you bet on Facebook, or bet on Google, or I give you another example, technology, Tesla, it really doesn't matter when did you get in. As far as you are in, earlier, you're going to make money. But keep in mind, tons of Facebook competitors died. And many Tesla's competitors or copycat did not survive. And similar things like Google. So the Google went public. There are many people wanted to go become a next Google, and none of them made it. Of course, including Microsoft, they created Bing. And Bing is still a good part of the Microsoft, but Bing never become a huge business of Google. So basically, doing technology investing is not as easy as buying stock. If you bet right, and your return could be a lot higher. If you bet wrong, you lose a lot. That's why I wouldn't recommend everybody to invest in technology unless you have a personal hobby, personal knowledge. Example, do you like 3D printing? And do you like robots? You have my daughter is in high school robotic club, so they know lots of pretty cool technology related 3D related robots. So then she has some leverage or knowledge base, be able to do some business in the space. If not, without that, it's very difficult to judge whether Amazon's new robots can make it or not. Okay, so I want to go back to this curve a little bit more. So the curve, so we look at the investment from macro level. So basically, you look at long-term investing. Long-term investing, you look at Warren Buffett's chart. It sounds so easy. All you do is hold. But Warren Buffett sold lots of stock before pandemic. Right at the beginning of the pandemic, he held like several $100 billion of cash at the beginning of the pandemic. This means that if he bought any stock like last year, other than like before March, before the crash, patient may be able to make significant money there. So there are two variables here. A, if the time comes, you have money. B, you need to decide to keep cash at the right timing. That's both tasks are extremely difficult because there are other than the economic challenge you'll be facing, like say this all the different variables we cannot control at all. Then there are lots of stuff we can control. We can understand. For instance, can we understand why this year this sector is doing well, this sector is not doing well? And we will understand in particular company we invested in, which state are they in? And in the sector we invested, which stage of the sector they are in. So if you don't have those knowledge, it's better to invest into indexed or invest to the low risk but also low return type of investment. So if you know, I give you an example. Austin has a great company called 3D printing house company called Icon. They raised $120 million last year. $100 million is not enough for them to become a public company, and they have to raise more money to be successful. Let me ask all of your questions. You can answer 1 month later, not today. If you are an investor, have money, would you like to invest into Icon? Keep in mind that Austin based and the real estate market is down, and there are lots of variables and the stock market is down. Is this company really worth the investment? To be honest, there's no unified answer even between the investors. So it's a good practice for all of you to practice. Would you like to invest Icon? And of course, there are lots of other competitors there as well. So I cannot give you a definite answer, but I give you a couple clues to find the answer. If you're not into the real estate investment, you're not into the technology, into like a construction or all those different robotic technologies, how they can evolve in the market. This evaluation will be too hard for you to make the judgment. You won't have enough information to make the judgment. So then, back to this stuff. We use a long-term investment. Long-term depends on how long. Do we say 1 year is long-term? Do we say 3 years long-term? Do we say 10 years is long-term? For Warren Buffett, typically 10 years even longer is called long-term. VC's investment typically lasts like from 6 years to 10 years. That's what we call VCs. That typically we call ourselves a long-term investor. We do not do trading. Trading actually is even harder. I give you an example. So if you trade the stock at the right timing, if you have the crystal ball, if you sell stock at always low point, and you sell at a high point, just make few trade, you could make far more money than Warren Buffett. Significant. You could make 10 times more than Warren Buffett. But the reality is that I ask how many people make more money than Warren Buffett. There are few. I mean, on the percentage wise, there are few people. Most people are not able to beat Warren Buffett's performance. The point I'm trying to make is that it sounds like so easy. All you do is that if you know when it's going down, you sell it. You buy or buy, and you know when it's high, you sell it. That's so easy if you can do it at the right timing. The problem is that the smartest people on this planet are working on billions of dollars to bet on the right timing to sell and the right timing to buy. And a few of them made it, few of them didn't make it. And the smartest people lost billions, tens of billions of dollars this year because of the market crash. So that is something I want to highlight. So basically, the point I'm trying to highlight is that each sector, each asset class has their own risk, require each type of knowledges, and those have each type of high return versus low return. You can say high performance bond versus high performance stock. You can say high performance real estate. You can have low performance real estate. So the type of investment is not, there's no good or bad. Very difficult to say this good or bad. For instance, even real estate, Austin's downtown market versus, like, say, I give example, San Marcos versus maybe even like Georgetown. Each of them probably has their own dynamic, and you can find a very good class of asset. You can also find a very bad class of asset. Really depends on your interest and your personal hobby and your personal knowledge and the friends working with you. So there's no, I don't make any recommendation of which class you can invest. I just invest is highly risky if you don't have enough knowledge. I wouldn't recommend you go into investment without enough preparation, training, and learning. But the good news is there's lots of simulation software now. I know at TLS, I recommend you guys do next year, do maybe an investment contest, use simulation, investment simulation software to say, okay, who can do a good job in investment. So that's the first group of presentation. First, talk long-term investment. If you guys have a question, I'll be happy to answer. Otherwise, we move on to our next topic is the startup venture investment ecosystem. Oh yeah, okay. Somebody asked me about investment environment between Austin and Silicon Valley. That's highly relevant to my next topic, is the venture ecosystem. So the reality, the truth is that investors typically do not invest alone. They invest with lots of other people. You think about a stock, you are investing with millions, maybe tens of millions of people every day. Decide which way you want to invest. Why stock increase? Because other people also buy like you. So I would like to talk about the ecosystem a little bit. There are many different types of early stage investors. Investors not only venture investors. Actually, most of early stage founders get their money from their friends, families, customers, grants, and venture fund investment. Only a small portion of the investment people get from the startups. So this is a very famous diagram in Silicon Valley. A little bit old, but I can give you a very good illustration. So the angel fund in Texas, there's a Central Texas Angel Network. There's about 5 to 8 pretty active angel network in Austin. So I would say what's the difference between Silicon Valley and Austin? And Austin's early stage investors are significantly smaller than Silicon Valley. Silicon Valley, the statistics say there's about 30,000 active angel investors in Silicon Valley. I think in Austin, there are significantly smaller in twofold. Number one is numbers. Number two is the activity. Silicon Valley has lots of active angels. I read some statistics. Some of the angel network in Texas, they have only made few investment per year. So earlier stage investment is the one which I think Austin is quite behind. And micro VCs and incubators actually already saw a lot. So a couple other. If you notice, Y Combinator actually is their top. I think Austin's their top. Texas is the number 3 or number 4 region of fund startups based for last year. So to give you some ideas there. So Austin, so this means many of actually California investors and New York investors do invest in Austin. So Austin is a booming town right now. The reason I moved from Silicon Valley to Austin 1.5 years ago was to follow this trend. I want to help more entrepreneurs who needed the help. But to build a venture ecosystem, just a few VC is not enough. And I know Andrews Horowitz just opened the office. Andrews Horowitz and Sequoia just opened the office in New York, but they have not opened in Austin yet. I bet Austin is on radar for next. I hope Andrews Horowitz and Sequoia and maybe Greenlock, a couple other funds may open the office in Austin soon in the next few years. So I would say Austin has a number of they call the mid-sized VCs. Jim Breer and Breer Capital actually he moved in 2020, I think like less than about half a year before me. He moved to Austin, Texas. So he's a very famous guy in Silicon Valley as well. So I can see this is going to happen a little more. So Austin, to me, that I really want to emphasize larger funds, Austin, Silicon Valley or New York-based fund can invest into Austin easily, not that hard. But earlier stage angel network is very difficult for Silicon Valley angel investor to invest into super earlier startup in Austin, Texas. Why? Because once you get later, you have lots of statistics and financials. You can do the due diligence work, check out the startups. But in earlier stage, you bet your investment into a startup. You have a coffee, a meeting, and meet the founder. You get a feeling who's his friend. Is he really good in his class, in his network? So I would say that the earlier stage angel network and the founder ecosystem is a part. I think Austin need to be enhanced to really to stand out in comparison with New York and other sectors, other regions. Because right now you can see that just follow Andrews Horowitz Sequoia. They opened the office in Florida, New York, and Los Angeles. So I would say Austin, Texas, naturally the next bet. So venture capital, I think you already have a speaker talk on this one. So angel investor is the one I really want to emphasize because Austin does have some, they call it oil money. And one of my friends said, there's some guy rich as God. I never heard this type of phrase when I was in California. So there are lots of rich people in Texas, but they are not used to tech angel investing. In Silicon Valley, the people who made them rich by shareholder of Google, by being staff or shareholder of Google, or even Amazon, Facebook, they are very used to angel investing. But in Texas, this is something a little bit new, particularly some old money. I was thinking and those people have lots of money. I think once those Texas old money become more active in angel investment, and then the earlier stage sectors be more active than today, and then have far higher chance to attract later stage investors invest into the company. Because if the company does not have enough initial support from angel investors, the small investors, it's very hard for them to compete with startups who does receive the earlier stage investment. Okay, so I also want to highlight the corporate VCs. Corporate VCs, actually is Intel, who is the largest VCs worldwide. You may be surprised. Actually, Intel venture claims they're the largest venture capital because they deploy the largest amount of money. That's a few years ago. Right now, I bet they're not because of Vision and Tiger Global. But a few years ago, before Vision's $100 billion fund and Intel and Qualcomm and Google Venture are a couple of largest venture capital worldwide because they just have unlimited capital to deploy. And those companies also deploy resources to help the startups other than money. So particularly if you're a startup, you want to get to the corporate, particularly in your sector to support you. That's far more valuable than just money. I know Shell Ventures is pretty active in Texas. Shell Ventures are looking for new technologies to disrupt energy. Okay, so this is another idea of the different phases of investment for a cycle of the startup from idea stage to to family and friends stage, the seed round stage, and to the VC stage, the growing stage. And as you can see that on different stage and the check size has different sizes. And so, this follow my previous introduction that so on the earlier stages, particularly as you're very small and you're not ready to raise money from VCs, then angel network, family, friends are probably the best way to raise money. This part, I think Silicon Valley are very, very active. Silicon Valley has far more number of accelerators and angel networks, and also there are lots of people. I give a couple of examples. Google's co-founder actually did lots of personal angel investment, and including Facebook, Mark Zuckerberg also did lots of personal investment. Why? Because they give out their friends, their previous employees. They're not really forbidden. Oh, you want to start a business? Oh, I look, you're smart. You work for me so long, and exceptional good. So I think it's money. You start your new business. So Silicon Valley, this is very popular for the boss to give their high performance staff some money when they start a new business. Okay. So, and also other than investment, financing, this is could be I have another slide, 10-page slide just for financing. I will not go through that. Okay. So on the other hand, I do want to give you a little bit statistic. There's 20, and I know right now is 28 million of US businesses, and most of them are not fundable. Even for all the angel funded startups, 90% of them failed. And even for the VC funded startups, still there's a significant number of startups failed. So only very small number of companies can make it. So this is a risk point. And when do you invest in a company? Keep in mind, if you buy the right company at day one, you can be rich. For instance, there's one famous professor in Stanford. He gave Google's co-founder $100,000 check with the startup company. He said, "This kids are too smart." So he write him a check, 100. This stock become over like $100 million many years after, if you bet wrong. But of course, assume the professor also write 100 check to other people who didn't make 100 million. Okay, so I want to share a little bit more information. So each investors are not investing alone, and many investors invest with other people. Those are some of notable, very famous angel investors. I'm hoping maybe Tiana, you guys can create notable angels in Austin or in Texas. We create another version, and I met many of them last few years. Actually, Jason Candace have a book called Angel. I interviewed him a few years ago, and he want to write about book about angel investment. And maybe we can invite Jason to come to talk about with other Austin, Texas, all the money about how to do angel investment. Okay, these are the different accelerators in most of them in California, and of course Texas. Austin has several accelerators that growing. I would say on the scale side, they're still a bit smaller than Silicon Valley, but accelerator in comparison with the number of startups, I think accelerator part actually they are good. Just need accelerator need a little more money to invest into the startups, and then providing services. Yeah. So these are earlier stage firms investing into earlier stage companies. Again, most of them in Silicon Valley. So maybe we should produce something in Texas as well. Okay, and those are many of the different corporates. I mentioned the Google, Qualcomm venture, and the Intel venture, but there are far more than that. Microsoft venture is also big VCs as well. And Shell venture just announced a $1 billion fund for energy and the sustainability sector. Okay, so these are the most active VCs. So this gives some numbers. We also, F50 published the most active angel network in Texas last year. We also published the most active new VCs, 50 VCs globally last year. Let's give some ideas here. Okay, so here are a couple of books I'd like to give a suggestion to read. including the Jason Candice Angel and the VC, and this is something you can take a look. Those are different blogs you can take a look. A6C Andrews Horowitz actually has a new called The Future. I talk about they publish lots of news and blogs under the brand of Future, right? You can get lots and lots of information. And let's talk about Austin, Texas right now. I moved to Austin, Texas. I'm very excited to move here. Still enjoy my small ranch here. It's very different lifestyle in comparison with California. So Austin has a very solid infrastructure to grow, which including founder communities and including the venture investing network. My friend CS actually started this venture capital association. I was there party last night. Lots of investors were there. You guys were busy, otherwise I can invite you guys to come over to take a look. So event is a South by South. I'm sure you already know that. I don't need to mention that. Angel Network. So I would say that Angel Network is a part which need a little bit more effort, and also earlier stage investors need a little bit more work. So Austin, I can say I agree with Elon Musk's word that Austin is the biggest booming town for next 50 years. The secret is that before I decided to move to Austin, I told a couple of my friends, I said, hey, Austin is the biggest opportunity for next 20 to 30 years. This is before Elon Musk says next 50 years. I think Austin is opportunities created by timing, by location, by multiple different factors added together. What I love the most is the semiconductor business in Austin, plus the live music, means technology plus creativity. These two added together is called innovation. So that's why Austin is a great place to live, and like many young people like living in San Francisco because the bar and the music. I think Austin has all the above. Has the bar, has a river, has a lake, has a party, and has the technologies. So I think I believe you guys have done an amazing job to organize this event. I'll be happy to answer some questions.
All right, Marshall, I think we have some questions in the Q&A, and I know you have some questions too, so feel free to go ahead, Wesley.
Yeah, so there were 2 questions in the Q&A. There's when interest is increased in technology and everyone says there's going to be like a recession, is there any advice, do you have any advice for investors in this sector on how to kind of cope with the challenge?
Okay. First, about the recession. Is there a recession? Depends who you ask. You can say yes, you can say no. Both answers are correct. If you take a look at the general stock price, yes, there is a recession. But if you take a look at the job market, if you take a look at the consumer spending, since there's no recession, the small slow down there. So this is not the recession we talk about many years ago. Lots of people, like 2009, lots of people get bankrupt and they don't have money, they're losing homes. That's called a real recession. So I would say this is, to me, I don't call this a recession, I call it adjustment. So a necessary adjustment for the stock price caused by the government print too much money last few years. And this is, the time has to come. It's okay, we'll overcome it. So technology, if you take a look at real technology innovation as it stopped, to be honest, I think for the small startup without enough solid product, but raising lots of money, that should stop. That's what we call inflation in the earliest investment. So that's why when you ask investor has money, investors are happy. Oh my goodness! Now suddenly, okay, there's nobody compete. Now we can invest in the startup with real money, real price, a much more fair price right now. So I gave you a couple examples. Particular sector, I mean, like say construction tech and the chronic disease. there are lots of innovations still ongoing. Is this a bad time to invest? No, it's actually the better time to invest because now the founders are far more realistic about their stock price, the valuation of the company, because whoever is really good can still get money. Whoever not good, they're gonna lose. They're going down. So I would say we're gonna wave the, we call it, just remove all the water. I don't know what another word say. Just burst out the bubbles, and then we can we can see the real market. To me, I believe that this is a necessary adjustment in the real estate pricing, as well as the stock market. But that's not going to change if for the larger funds investment for solid companies, particular if you are innovation leader in the particular sector, again, in chronic disease and construction tech, and the chance that you still get very solid investment.
The other question in the Q&A chat was, what approach or tools would you use to, if you were going to invest in Icon Technologies?
Okay, so let's talk a little bit. First, I'm the claims. I'm not current shareholder of Icon. It's already too big, and also I don't recommend to invest in Icon. But if you are interested in construction tech, Icon is a company you have to take a look, and then you have to make your own decision. So for me, that one of the two things I'm looking at is the market. So Austin and Dallas has the nation's largest market of new house building right now. So particularly Austin has the largest percentage of population growth among the mid-sized cities in America. So this will create very strong demand, and also there's because of labor shortage in Austin, in nationwide labor shortage. But I assume that will be better once the stock market is going down. So to me, that Icon is in a sector which is very fast growing. However, on the other hand, so right now, yes, there's a market adjustment. Does Icon get enough like demand on the market? Because Icon use a very special 3D printing technology. There's an advantage of this technology. There's also disadvantage of these technologies. You know, 3D printing, we are printing a material which is we call it, some people like the material. I wouldn't say good or bad. Just some people like that material. Some people don't like this material. In some particular scenarios, Icon can be very, very quick to build a new home. So however, the question, what do we compare? We are comparing with a couple other technology companies use a different technology to build a home. I give example, in California, there's a company called STOA. They raised about $90 million, and they use a prefab home, a modular home. So basically build all the different modular in the manufacturer, then ship to the site to assemble the home. They assemble time probably in 1/10 of the time. And also there's other technology they call the prefab home. They build like home like 800 square foot or 1,500 square foot. Pre-build everything in the manufacturer, ship to the site to install. So I would say that on the smaller homes, the prefab home probably going to be far more efficient in terms of reducing cost and also about the speed. But in far more complex home, 3D printing and also the modular home have bigger advantages. The question is that, do we have enough space for all of them to win? The answer is yes. We have space for all of them to win in each sector. Assumption that they are the winner in the particular sector. There are a couple other 3D printing companies also on the market right now in different regions of the market. And 3D printing, one of the challenge, you need to have a larger site to build. And also need to have the machine, have a team to support when they deploy the site. For instance, you have a 3D printing in Texas, in Dallas, you need in Houston, maybe if you go to New York, I'm just using example, maybe you never go to New York. So the question is that how many does Icon has enough additional funding to support its growth, does have enough client pipeline of customers waiting to be built. that's critical at this particular timing. So if the ADAS has enough client, this means it generates lots of cash flow for the company. Company can overcome the current challenge and overcome the competitors. If the competitors get a bigger funding and a bigger customer base, this means they have far better cash flow and cash, and then the competitors is going to have an advantage. So to me, that's right now, as we call the customer acquisition, the customer growth is the most important things I'll be looking at Icon.
I was going to ask, what's the best way to find kind of like emerging technologies in the industry?
This question is a little bit too broad. So I would say I give two clues. Number one, I give a negative results that in general, you should take a technology you have a personal interest or your friend has a personal interest. I give example, if you like to be a doctor, there are lots of medical devices, medical technology, medical robots around. If you like a construction, like a manufacturer, lots of technologies as well. If you like Web3, like crypto, there are lots of different technologies there as well. It's very difficult to compare Apple versus Peach, right? They have different flavor. You can see, you cannot see which one is good. It's about your personal interest. If you don't have enough personal knowledge, you go for the leaders. You say, okay, who is the biggest investors? Andreessen Horowitz, Secret. What are the cutting edge technology companies are they invest? So that's two type of answers. And there's, to me, that I recommend you take a look of all the big VCs. Sequoia has a blog, and Andreessen Horowitz has a blog. Take a look at this blog. They periodically they announce some of investment, or they announce their analyst some of the particular sectors. That would be a very good resource for you guys.
Are there any other questions, or I don't think?
If not, that's the end of the Summer Investment Summit for high school students. We've had a great 2.5 days. Thank you for everyone who have participated, came and asked questions. We really appreciate it. And then we wish everyone best of luck in the next school year, and have a great rest of your summer.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Topper. Thank you so much. We appreciate it.
So again, thank you all for coming to the investment summit. If you wanted to see yesterday's session, we are going to be posting that on our YouTube channel, which you can find on our website. And we'll break that up into each of the 4 speakers that were there yesterday. We love doing this conference. If you all want to see more, please email us. Let us know what you think. If you want to add different topics, or if you want to see something new, like something on law or governance or economics, just anything that you want to learn outside of school. Other than that, I think that this has been a great conference. I think Tiana, Marshall, and Matthew, who couldn't be here, unfortunately, all agree that this was quite the experience. So thank you all, and have a nice start to your school year.
Marshall, you have anything to add?
I just want to say I'm happy I was part of this, and thank you all for attending. Yeah.
All right, thank you. So, end this conference. Let us know any feedbacks. Feel free to email us anytime. Thank you so much.
Thank you all.
Thank you.